Dragon Clan. Mingfei Returns from Warhammer 40,000. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 Dream Black Swan. The whistling of wind and snow came from outside the dark door. Under the silvery white moonlight, the piled clouds seemed to merge with the towering snow-capped mountains. Just looking at it could make people feel a chill that froze their hearts. Renee liked full moon nights very much. On every full moon night, she would dream of the giant black snake. It tossed the black swan harbor to the brink of collapse like a raging dragon, and finally coiled on the top of the church overlooking the Arctic Ocean. In this extremely real dream, the tight door would open, and she would walk in the empty corridor, with moonlight shining in from the small windows, and she could go wherever she wanted. She could go to the library to take out a big book and read it carefully, or go to the kitchen to get something to eat. There was always bread baking on the fire, and no matter when she came, the bread was always baked just right. But this full moon night seemed particularly terrifying. Renee didn't wait for the black snake, and there was no hot bread in the kitchen. She hugged Zorro tightly in her arms and stumbled barefoot in the cold corridor. 24-23, 15-14, the small rooms on the left side of the corridor passed by, and the numbers painted in white on the iron door kept getting smaller. There was a child in each room. At this time, they were all lying on the narrow window with the iron door, and their golden eyes stared at Renee, who was running away indifferently. Chasing her were the nurses and soldiers from Black Swan Port, but they had all turned into black monsters at this time, as if the monsters were wearing nurse uniforms and soldier uniforms. Their skin was covered with scales, and their faces became very hideous, 10 times more terrifying than polar bears, no, 100 times. Renee saw the head nurse. She was the tallest, and her reptilian thighs had burst her nurse uniform. A thick tail like a crocodile was dragging behind her, and she held a shovel in her hand. She thought of the little seal that strayed into this cold harbor. The hungry little guy crawled at her feet and stared at her with his pitiful black pupils. Renee wanted to reach out and touch its head, but the head nurse came over and beat it to death with a shovel, and then there was an extra seal soup for dinner. At this time, the head nurse's terrifying golden eyes stared at Renee, as if she wanted to beat her to death with the shovel in her hand. Accompanying them was the kind and amiable doctor. The children liked him very much, and Renee was no exception. The tweed military uniform fit his tall body, the trouser line was iron straight, the collar was stuffed with a purple scarf, and the pure silver hair was neatly combed back. He looked like a young man in his 20s. But his wrinkled cheeks did show that he was old, and the depths of his eyes were full of traces of time. The doctor still had the gentle smile on his face. He knocked on the black wooden clapper in his hand and walked among the monsters. Renee knew that the children here had all had their heads operated on, and they would behave well as soon as they heard the clappers. But she was an exception. The doctor loved her very much, and Zorro was her birthday gift. But now, the doctor was chasing her with a terrible monster. Did she do something wrong, and the doctor wanted to punish her? Renee wanted to wake up from this real nightmare immediately. She would rather not look forward to this full moon night in the future. But the strong wind brought by the shovel in the head nurse's hand told her that all this was real. Zorro, who she didn't have time to pick up when she fell, the teddy bear that she had been holding in her arms, was flattened and stained with scarlet blood on the shovel. Renee shed tears silently, but she didn't dare to stop to mourn for Zorro and kept running forward. On at the end of the corridor was a lonely iron door with a huge 0 written on it in red paint. Room 0. Renee knew 0, a child who was treated specially. When she encountered such danger, she could only think of 0. Because 0 was the only one in the world who would save her. Just as 0 told her, "We will not abandon each other or betray each other on this journey, until the end of death." Renee believed it, just like when she was locked up and cried until she was silent. He asked Black Snake to save her. But when she threw herself on the iron door of the room, she found that she couldn't say anything. Her throat seemed to be blocked by tears, and she could only make low sobs. "You are just a dirty paper doll, Renee," the head nurse roared in a low voice, like a hungry wolf, her dark golden eyes staring at the tender lamb in front of her, and raised the shovel in her hand. Through the hazy tears, Renee could see the white air coming out of the head nurse's nostrils. Then, she heard heavy breathing from the other side of the iron door. It was like waking up a sleeping angry dragon. With the help of a ray of cold moonlight, Renee saw the scarlet blood emblem with outstretched wings on the giant's chest. The giant casually discarded the stiff body of the head nurse, and a fascinating red light lit up from the helmet eyepiece, staring coldly at the monsters not far away. The monsters actually took a few steps back, and they instinctively felt fear in front of this metal giant. "Who are you? Who are you?" Renade heard the doctor's shrill scream. The doctor knocked the clapper again. The sound was monotonous but rapid and intense, and the golden light in the monster's eyes that had dimmed due to fear became blazing again. Stimulated by the sound of the clapper, they screamed and pounced on the giant, like a group of ferocious black jackals. "Dirty alien!" The giant's muffled roar like thunder came from the gap in the grill of the helmet's mouth. He also took a step and charged. In Renade's cognition, the movements of giants are generally slow and clumsy, just like what is said in fairy tales. She had never imagined that this giant could burst out at such an amazing speed, like a galloping chariot. The whole corridor was shaking and groaning under his violent footsteps. Bang! The giant turned his shoulder and used the thick shoulder armor that covered and protected his entire upper arm to deal with a monster that rushed over. But he was not defending, but attacking. Between the charge and the charge, the giant won with an overwhelming crushing posture. The sound of the bones of the monster that hit the shoulder armor head-on was clearly audible, and its hideous face was completely sunken. Bang! When the giant knocked the corpse away and stood up again, a cold spear appeared in his hand. The spear tip glowed with a silver-white light, and it looked like dense energy like electric current surrounded the sharp edge of the spear. And then it was a one-sided killing. No monster could touch the giant at all. Renade couldn't even see the giant's attack posture. When he swung the spear, the killing was over. Only the black blood that kept spurting out from the monster's forehead, neck, or back of the head confirmed their death. After Renade's rapid heartbeats beat 8 times, all the monsters were killed by the dark golden giant, leaving only the doctor. "You're a heretic." The giant pronounced the doctor's death sentence. In fact, when the giant's words came out, the doctor's silver hair had been dyed red with blood, and the death sentence ended with the end of the announcement. The corridor returned to silence. The giant turned his head, and Renade could feel that the eyes behind the other's helmet eyepiece had become much softer. "Zero?" Renade asked softly. The giant did not answer, but walked towards her. The cold moonlight outside the window illuminated a tearful red heart in the black and white spots on his left shoulder armor. Chapter 52. The third member. November 2, Mingfei woke up from his sleep. "I had a good dream." Mingfei raised his eyebrows and smiled. From the perspective of a weaker warrior, this was already a good dream. During the time when he was trying to learn the Holy Blood Priest, the first thing he had to learn was to comfort the brothers who woke up from nightmares. Many times, weeps would have nightmares. In the dream they watched others get hurt, and they could do nothing. After waking up, they would be thankful that no one was really hurt and pray with gratitude, and then continue to rest. Some weeps would be too emotional because of this, and they needed to be comforted and persuaded. Praise the Emperor. Mingfei prayed softly. Then, he began to recall the dream just now. That little girl called me Zero? Those aliens seem to be the so-called Deadpools. Is it the Emperor's revelation that I should go and purify the aliens there? That power spear, should it be the price of victory? Apart from the power sword of the chapter master, it is the best weapon in the entire chapter. There were still 10 minutes before the morning prayer of 4:30, and there was no need to lie down and continue to rest. Mingfei turned on his computer covered with purity marks and logged into the Night Watch forum. Shocking. The true strength of the S-Class. MVP of the War Practice Class, the Principal's afternoon tea invitation: kill a monster every 10 steps, without getting a drop of blood on your body. The most popular posts on the forum were still about him. Mingfei's eyes quickly swept over them and directly clicked on his own post: Weeping Angels Chapter recruitment in the personal record. The replies covered more than 300 flaws, but most of them were meaningless replies such as eat melons and leave your name, and no students showed interest in joining the Weeping Angels. Mingfei closed the computer in a sullen manner. And at 5 in the morning prayer was over. The lights in the empty Black Moon Hall were on. When Mingfei walked out of the room, Shuzaham was already waiting for him at the door. The two crossed their hands in front of their chests and performed the Sky Eagle salute. "Do you need to wake him up? We've given him 2 days to adapt," Shuzaham said. "Well, we have to let him adapt to our pace." Mingfei nodded and walked towards the room at the end of the corridor in the room area. Before he opened the door, he could hear the deafening snoring inside. "Get up, Finger. It's time to exercise today." Mingfei knocked on the door. The snoring did not subside at all. He suddenly felt helpless. Fingal came to the Black Moon Hall 2 days ago. He said that he had withdrawn from the decadent gentle land of the Student Union and wanted to join the Weeping Angels. Mingfei did not worry too much about whether the idiom abandon the dark and join the light was appropriate. He expressed a warm welcome to the first member who wanted to take the initiative to join the Weeping Angels in 3 months. Shu Zihan, who had always been serious, showed full distrust. Considering that the scandal between him and Mingfei in the academy was caused by Finger, he suspected that Finger applied to join the Weeping Angels, in addition to taking a fancy to the independent room in the Black Moon Hall, mainly to make some big news. But since Mingfei agreed, he naturally had no reason to object. Finger was once an excellent student of grade A, but unfortunately, after the mission in Greenland, he became much more decadent. But you can believe that as long as it is related to the Emperor, he will become a thorough avenger. This is the original words of Ange when he recommended Finger go on fringe to Mingfei. The fighting faith of the Avengers is the most firm, and Finger is also a computer genius and one of the top hackers in the academy. So Mingfei quickly agreed to his request. Among the 1.5 people who came back from Greenland, Von Schneider, who was on the verge of being scrapped, and Finger, who had lost his soul, formed the one person. The remaining half seems to be Fingal's girlfriend, who was made into wetware and stuck into the college's computer system. No wonder Fingal suffered such a severe blow. Wetware refers to biological neural tissue connected to the mechanical creation system. Because of the AI rebellion, AI with thinking ability and independent decision-making is one of the most sensitive red lines of the human empire. Therefore, from war machines to servo skulls used as computers, there are certain wetware. The more intuitive feeling is that the brain is soaked in amniotic fluid and plugged with various connecting wires. Or directly plug a bunch of wires into the machine from a person who has his limbs cut off and the frontal lobe removed, acting as an artificial system. It's time to get up, Brother Fingal. After calling several times without success, Mingfei could only go into the room and ask Fingal to get up himself. The class time is 8 o'clock, junior brother, why are you getting up so early? You will easily lose the third precious member of our Weeping Angels Corps. Fingal, a half-awake dead pig, was dragged off the bed by Mingfei. Then you can continue to rest. Move out of the Black Moon Pavilion after dawn. You are not a big deal to eliminate the heretics of the Emperor. Mingfei said. Fingal's originally confused eyes suddenly widened and stared at Mingfei, with golden flames burning in the depths of his pupils. Did the principal tell you? After a long silence, he spoke. Yeah. You have wasted nearly 3 minutes. Mingfei nodded. Damn, that old guy is really unreliable, Fingal muttered in a low voice and got up from the ground. The 1.9-meter tall sturdy German man became energetic and upright, completely different from the decadent and sleepy F-level student just now. The day before Fingal joined the Weeping Angels, he became the first F-level student in the history of the academy. But this did not affect his mood. Before going to the school committee, he even opened a handicap on the Night Watcher forum to bet whether he would be demoted from E-level again. Well, since the old bitch principal has revealed everything, Fingal stretched, as if he wanted to put all his tiredness behind him. Then I'll listen to you, Angel Captain. ... Very good. Then I hope you can put on your clothes first. Mingfei looked away expressionlessly. Fingal was stunned, then he screamed and picked up the quilt that fell on the ground and wrapped his body. He has the habit of sleeping naked. Thank you to the hypocritical, indescribable, untarnished, light and shadow heaven, the ultimate Emperor Armor, Arbitration Agency, Book Friend 202022101031538 Lemon Boy and other angels who reported death for their rewards and support. Thank you to all loyal Astates for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Thank you. The editor notified that it will be on the shelves on the 1st of next month. Before that, I will try my best to pay off the few chapters I owe. Chapter 53. College Classes. Ahem, the chapter number is wrong. The bell tower of the academy rings 3 times a day. The first time represents the time to get up, the second time is lunch time, and the third time is the end of the last class of the day. The person who lives in the bell tower and is responsible for ringing the bell is the vice principal. Automatic bell ringing is soulless. Fingal said so, and Mingfei agreed. The bell for getting up today was a little later than yesterday. It may be that the vice principal drank whiskey and watched old western movies and was fascinated and forgot the time to ring the bell. The first time in the morning is not a big deal. The students are more worried about whether the last time will be delayed like this. When the bell rang, the 3 weeping angels of the Black Moon Hall had completed their daily 100-kilometer physical training. Although Finkel kept shouting, "Help me, I'm dying, Captain, I beg you to stop and rest for a while," he didn't look like he was about to die of exhaustion, and his voice was full of energy. As the principal said, this seemingly decadent mule horse is actually still an A-level hybrid with strong physical fitness. No wonder I'm the only one here these past few months. Your club's name is so naive, and you still do this kind of high-intensity training before dawn every day. Finkel was eating grilled white sausages and boiled eggs in the cafeteria to replenish his energy lost early in the morning. We're a war group, and only warriors are left. Lumenfei took a sip of hot milk and savored the rich and delicious milk protein that slid down his throat. Although it lacked calcium, it was much more delicious than the liquid food mixed with ceramics and heavy metals in the past. Well, if I had heard you say this before I would have laughed out loud immediately, but you do have a very dazzling record now, Finkel said, and then his face with the sausage in his mouth became depressed again. The principal, that old bitch. I wanted to hide well, and then suddenly rise up when the academy is in danger in the future, and make a stunning debut to make my junior brothers and sisters bow down at my feet, but my plan was shattered just like that. Isn't this good? If you have something to say, just say it directly, instead of you and me playing riddles to each other. Tell me about the information you have investigated about the Emperor. You were a top computer genius, and your woman, you should know a lot. Lumenfei didn't want to joke with him, so he got straight to the point. Emperor? Finkel's expression became serious, and the bitten sausage fell into the plate. To be honest, I didn't find out more privately than the academy. The only clue is the ID of the prince, but after the transaction of the Copper Watch wreckage was completed, this ID was cancelled. At the time, Norma could only trace his last logging IP address to Siberia. What about the 2 fallen hybrids? Creddy Brandon Taylor Donald? Now the guys in the executive department are trying their best to dig out their network of relationships. I don't need to repeat the same route with them. I will continue to start from the Hunter website. Finkel said. By the way, check a place called Black Swan Port, that place gives me a wrong feeling. Lumenfei said. While recalling the joy of saving people and the sense of security brought by the long-lost power armor, Lumenfei also noticed the heretic who knocked the clapper. The annoying clapper sound was exactly the same as the one played by the speaker in the hospital, but in the dream, as an Astator, he was not affected at all. Okay, leave it to me, Captain. Finkel patted his chest. I remember there are 2 practical classes today. Lumenfei turned around and asked Shuzaham beside him. Well, 2 classes of bioequine and battlefield simulation. Shuzaham said. Then it seems that we can go back to Black Moon Hall directly. Lumenfei had no interest in such practical classes. He urgently needed a real battle like the one that night to purify the aliens to find his own strange spiritual power. But the first class is Dragon Family Genealogy taught by Principal Ange himself. I suggest that it is best to finish his class and then skip the remaining practical classes to go back to Black Moon Hall. Shuzaham reminded. The former startup student of Shilan Middle School also said the word-skipping class is likely under the influence of Lumenfei. But in fact, Shuzaham thought that there was really no need to take such a strong practical class. The teachers at your castle academy are probably some former Navy SEALs or some masters, but they are not comparable to Lumenfei, an angel of death who kills as soon as he strikes. Anger's class? Sure. Lumenfei nodded. He was also very interested in the other side of his hometown's history. In just a few thousand years of history, dragons, hybrids and humans wrote the history together. If Lumenfei had not read the textbook on the genealogy of the dragon family, he would not have thought that many of those who left their names in human history were hybrids, and there were even dragon aliens. Although it sounds a bit ridiculous, the textbook on the genealogy of the dragon family does teach these contents. Principal Hilbert G. Nanger occasionally teaches this course a few times, and no one dares to be absent even once during his teaching period. And at the age of 12, Attila was sent to the Omen Court as a hostage of the Huns, where he received a complete education and felt the call and awakening of his bloodline. And there he met Honoria, the sister of the future Roman emperor, but she was just a child at the time. In the curved-tiered classroom, Principal Angus, with silver white hair, strolled in the aisle of tables and chairs with a textbook in his hand. His figure was as straight as a pine tree, and he wore a crystal monocle on his right eye. His eyes, as sharp as the glasses, occasionally left the textbook in his hand and scanned the students in the classroom. No one was talking or whispering in the classroom, only the rustling sound of writing notes. Mingfei listened very carefully, but he didn't plan to take notes. He came with the mentality of listening to stories. In fact, this Hun King Attila, who was called God's Whip, is a noble first generation of dragons, and one of the 4 great kings, the king of earth and mountains. A simple question, Angus said with a gentle smile. In addition to this king of earth and mountains, who were the other 3 kings born by the Black King Nito? This is indeed a very simple question, which was explained in the first lesson of Introduction to the Origin of Dragon Civilization, and almost all students raised their hands. Anger's eyes swept around and finally stopped at Mingfei, but Mingfei did not raise his hand. Student Shuzahan, you answer it. He kept his smile and looked at Shuzahan, who was sitting next to Mingfei. The king of bronze and fire, the king of ocean and water, and the king of sky and wind. Shuzahan stood up and answered. Very good, all correct, sit down. Angus smiled and nodded, and continued to read the story of Attila. After Shuzahan sat down, he suddenly heard Mingfei ask softly, You said, is it possible that the Odeon we met is the incarnation of one of these Dragon Kings? Chapter 54 Detention. Odeon? Dragon King? Shuzahan was stunned. Of course, I'm just guessing. These aliens have so many identities in human history, like this Whip of God, those myths should also have it. Maybe Zeus, Hela, the gods in these stories are actually aliens. Mingfei said softly. Shuzahan was silent. The viaduct we entered that night, you should know what it is. Mingfei said softly. It comes from the Nordic mythology and legends. It is the land of the dead that countless alchemists want to enter, Nibelung. Shuzahan's expression changed slightly, and he answered in a low voice. Although the book says it's mysterious, it's actually an independent space opened up by aliens. It's just that there is a restriction. Only with the permission of its owner, other living beings can enter this Nibelungen. If the life can still come out alive, then there will be an extra mark similar to a key on his body. Next time, you can enter again without the owner's consent. Mingfei took a pen and sketched on the white textbook. He soon drew a delicate gate with flowing vortices and 2 little people with keys hanging on their bodies. In other words, if we go back there again, even if we bring a whole battle group, I'm afraid only the 2 of us can enter, unless that false god is willing to let others in. Mingfei said softly. Then we can drive a troop carrier in. Shuzahan said after a little thought. Ahem, if possible, I also want to sit in the troop carrier you drive. But now I still hope that you can return your attention to the course, Mingfei and Shuzahan. Principal Angus coughed twice, interrupting their discussion. But he didn't mean to blame, the smile on his face was just a little helpless. Mingfei and Shuzahan had to sit down first, planning to discuss the matter of entering Nibelungen after class. Although Attila died in 453 AD, these noble monarchs are not so easy to disappear with history. When they feel that they're about to die, they will make bone bottles in advance and hide their remains in them. After a long time, they will break out of the coffin again and usher in their new life. And continue to teach. The bell rang on time, and the students walked down from the lecture hall one by one, politely saying goodbye to Ange on the podium. Ange also smiled and waved goodbye to each student. But 3 people were left behind. Mingfei, Shuzahan, and Caesar Gattuso. Dear Principal, I think I was still very serious in your class today. Caesar scratched his long golden hair, with a helpless smile on his handsome face. Don't worry, I didn't keep you here just because you were daydreaming or chatting in class. Angus smiled and said, I kept you here for other things. Of course, come one by one. First of all, it's your business, Caesar Gattuso. His gaze stayed on Caesar. Yesterday I received greetings from your Uncle Frost. Hearing this name, Caesar frowned, his expression suddenly turned cold, and he clearly showed disgust. Really? I haven't paid attention to him for a while. From the beginning of his greeting, he didn't use Dear Principal Hill but Gene Angus, our beloved dragon-slaying leader, but you son of a bitch bastard Angus. I knew he was still dissatisfied with me for letting you participate in such a dangerous war practice class, although this was Schneider's request. As the principal I can only help him take this responsibility. As an educator, I need to build good relationships with students and parents, and act as a bridge of communication. What do you think about this, Caesar? Angus rubbed his forehead. This is my own decision. It has nothing to do with the Gattuso family. Besides, my uncle can't represent the entire Gattuso family. Caesar said coldly, and glanced at Mingfei and Shuzahan who were sitting a few seats below. Well, it seems that I can only reply to Frost in this way, and then I hope that I can get a more friendly address when I receive your uncle's reply again. Angus smiled and nodded. Principal, you can also add one more sentence. My family is not in charge of my affairs in Castle Academy. I don't care about the Gattuso family name as much as they think. If possible, I don't mind changing my surname to Gulvaig until I am kicked out of the academy. Caesar said coldly. You can come to the Weeping Angel. We are still short of people here. Mingfei smiled and invited Caesar. If the time really comes, I will consider it. Caesar's cold expression eased a lot, and he nodded to Mingfei. Mingfei made an okay gesture. I will consider adding this sentence to the letter, but I am afraid that this will cut off the bridge of communication between me and Frost. Angus smiled and nodded. You can leave, Caesar. Shuzahan, your word spirit, is it Junyan? Angus' eyes stayed on Shuzahan, and the smile on his face faded a little. Yes. Shuzahan nodded. To be honest, your word spirit is the most aggressive and high-risk word spirit in the entire academy so far. But this is also accompanied by the instability of the dragon bloodline in the hybrid. The school board requires me to keep a close watch on you, and even imprison you if necessary. Angus said. Mingfei frowned. What kind of background did this school board have? They wanted to imprison their own brothers right away. Of course, I'm not their puppet, and I believe you won't turn into a runaway humanoid gasoline bomb launcher. Angus smiled. Tell me, Shuzahan. Do you have the confidence to suppress the dragon bloodline in your body that may riot one day? Shuzahan glanced at Mingfei, his eyes clear and calm as water. Under the glorious blessing of the Emperor, the alien bloodliner can never control my loyal soul. Very good answer. Angus clapped his hands lightly. In that case, I will ignore the people on the board of directors. You can leave too. Shuzahan stood up and bowed slightly, whispering to Mingfei. I'll wait for you outside. Mingfei nodded slightly. When leaving the lecture hall, Shuzahan also closed the door, and the classroom suddenly became quiet. Are you interested in going to an auction with me in a few days? After a while, Angus spoke, with a smile on his face. Thanks to all the loyal angels who support me, including Zanser, Xuan Gongzi, Yinrin Zhuoxni, Zizaya Fushan Guo, Dark Night Watchman, and Kusinri Ranhei for their rewards. Thanks to all the Astates for their monthly votes. I will resume the chapters the day after tomorrow, and I can also post pictures in the previous paragraphs and book reviews. Chapter 55 Flag. In his impression, the so-called auction is to put an item out and then a group of people shout out the price, and the highest bidder wins. This has nothing to do with him, unless the auction is a powerful weapon like a power sword or a power spear, which he needs now. So Mingfei's subconscious reaction is, auction. Do you want me to snatch something? No, we follow the regular auction process. Angus shook his head. Then what is the reason for me to accompany you? Mingfei asked. He didn't want to waste time on meaningless things. He might as well paint and pray, or train Shuzahan and Finger into qualified warriors. It depends on what kind of answer you want to hear. Angus smiled lightly. Be honest, you know I don't want to guess riddles and hear lies. Mingfei said. Then I'll tell the truth. Angus stood up and walked to Mingfei and sat down. Mingfei could smell the strange smell of men's perfume on him. I want you to appear as the banner of Castle Academy. Or in other words, weapons. Angus had a faint smile on his lips. Weapons? Yes, weapons. The predecessor of Castle College was the Secret Party. The Secret Party's purpose was to kill all pure-blooded dragons. It was a firm dragon slayer. But Castle College is not the only place in the world where mixed bloods live. It is even only a small part of it. And other mixed blood forces do not hold the same philosophy as the Secret Party. They hide in the dark side of human society and quietly watch the development and changes of the world. After suffering serious setbacks in the previous dragon-slaying battles, even the Secret Party was pessimistic about the vision of dragon-slaying. The difference between pure-blooded dragons and mixed bloods cannot be described in words. When you face a real dragon in person, you will be able to experience how vulnerable the power and wealth that the Secret Party is proud of in the human world is in front of them. Angus said. I will look forward to that moment. Mingfei nodded. Of course, you're S-class, a natural warrior. So I want you to appear in the world of hybrids as a weapon and flag, so that the Secret Party can feel at ease and re-energize. At the same time, it can also deter other hybrid forces, let them know that the Secret Party has not declined, so that before we go toward the dragons, there will be guys who want to use us as a gift to the dragons. When necessary, we can also take the initiative. To use the words of the great man in your hometown, it is one punch to open the door, so as to prevent 100 punches from coming. Ange said. It sounds like I don't need to refuse. Mingfei said. He didn't mind being a flag or a weapon. He now needed to gather his own strength to eliminate the aliens in his hometown. Just like the father of Genes, St. Giles led the 9th Legion of Astartes Blood Angels to eliminate all enemies of mankind. But you should also be one of the flags, Principal Ange. Students and professors respect you very much. He looked at the exquisite and handsome old man in front of him. I'm old, almost 130 years old, and I'm alive today only because of my revenge. Ange smiled. In fact, in my opinion, you are relatively young, Principal Ange. Mingfei said sincerely. Don't joke, I'm still no match for you young people. Also, let's go meet my old friend after the auction and see if we can get some more information out of him, about the Emperor. Ange said. Going to the auction with an old bitch? That's a good job. The events and parties that the principal attends are very high class. It is said that every time there are girls who were more than 100 years younger than him who were obsessed with him. Finger's eyes lit up, and his face was full of hope. If you can attend a party afterwards, don't forget to pack a few lobsters for your loyal soldiers, Captain. Time quickly came to 3 days later, the day when Ange was scheduled to attend the auction. Of course you can if you have one, but I still hope that you can show your true strength in the next combat training. Mingfei said, opening the aluminum alloy briefcase specially made by the equipment department. In the training of the past few days, he could sense Finger's amazing physical fitness, but the other party was always unwilling to take off the disguise on his body. I'm afraid that only when facing the heretics of the Emperor, Finger is willing to really burst out his anger and edge. Do you want to join? Shuzaham asked on the side. He saw that the briefcase contained a bolt pistol. No need, Anger's only arranged for me to participate, and the possibility of a fight is not great. I'm just not used to being without a weapon. Mingfei took out the gold and red bolt pistol from the box and couldn't let it go. The red color comes from the bright red heart symbol of the holy blood of the saint and the tears of the weepers. The gold and double wind painted carvings and exquisite patterns on both sides of the blood drop are shining. This unique artistic style of painting is naturally impossible to come from the hands of the equipment department. This is the result of his careful carving the day before yesterday. 2 extra magazines with 20 rounds of metal storm bombs were enough for self-defense, not to mention that Ange, an old warrior who was hiding his true abilities, was also accompanying them. Chapter 56 Making light of heavy matters. At the entrance of the bustling Chicago train station, many passengers noticed the tall and handsome young man. His black windbreaker rustled in the cold wind. Although it was not a famous brand, the drop of blood on the back of the windbreaker was dazzling. Not everyone knows the famous brands of clothing. In most cases, a person's temperament is more important than good clothing. Regardless of identity and status, when people first saw the young man with a suitcase, they felt a sense of calmness and tranquility. Even if a whole team of armed terrorists rushed in the next second, there was no need to be afraid. This young man would stand up and eliminate them all. This made people more curious about his identity, and even a bold girl took the initiative to come forward and wanted to talk to him with a bright and moving smile. After Mingfei politely told the girl that he did not speak English and refused the other party's conversation, he took out his mobile phone from his pocket and checked the time. 15:50. He opened the message from Norma again. Dear student Mingfei, this is a task message. Please be sure to arrive at the Chicago train station at 16 o'clock Chicago time today. There will be a silver Porsche waiting for you at the entrance of the train station, with the license plate number CAS001. Please ask the person in charge of the task in the car for the specific task details. Please don't worry about your attendance. The executive department has asked for leave from the professors of various departments for the next 2 days on your behalf. The person in charge of the task of driving a Porsche is undoubtedly Principal Ange. From professors to students at Castle College, everyone loves to drive this type of high-end car. Once he and Shuzaham were invited to attend the student union's dance. That night, the various luxury cars parked in front of the Yamba Hall could hold a luxury car exhibition hall, but only the 2 of them walked there. Later, Shuzaham said that as the leader of a regiment, you must have a means of transportation. Mingfei thought about it and it was true, but unfortunately there were no tanks such as Land Raider or Predator to buy here, so he had to show the unique artistic style of the Weeping Angels on the Mercedes-Benz sent by Shuzaham's family. Judging from the time, it seems that he has arrived a little early, and the person in charge of the task has not appeared yet. Just as Mingfei was thinking about going back to the train station to sit and wait, a silver swift shadow drove into his sight. In the convertible sports car, the old man with silver white hair smiled and waved to him. Under the gaze of the pedestrians who stopped to observe the good cars and good people, Mingfei lowered his head and sat in Anger's Porsche 911 Carrera. Looks like I came just in time. Anger smiled, with a bright red rose on the chest of his black custom suit. It's okay, why do you drive this kind of car? Mingfei frowned. Although this car is not mine, it is also a very good car. The engine made a cheerful roar, and the silver cheetah rushed forward with a melodious aria. There is not even a cover, let alone bullets. Even if a brick falls, it can smash our heads. And the car is not good looking. Mingfei sighed. Your awareness is very good, but please believe me, there is only a 3% chance of a fight in this mission. And laughed dumbly, holding the steering wheel with one hand, the silver cheetah ran at full speed on the road. And this car has its advantages, it drives fast. If a fight really breaks out, we, an old man and a young man, can run faster. The Porsche ran through countless red lights along the way until it stopped at a quiet and deserted road. Tell me about the auction we are going to attend this time. Sotheby's auction house, one of the best auction houses in the world, is an important circulation place for artworks. It usually only opens twice a year. The first time is mostly normal artworks, occasionally mixed with a few alchemical items. The second time is dedicated to serving hybrids, auctioning alchemical items collected from all over the world. I think there is something you'll be interested in. Ange handed over a beautifully printed document, turned to page 7. On the 7th page of the document was an ancient parchment book with about 20 pages. The photo only showed the keyring-like words on the cover of the book. What is this? Mingfei asked. Alchemy to main construction book, lifting heavy things as light. Lifting heavy things as light. Yes, this book records such an alchemy domain. It can impose an alchemy domain on an object that cannot expand and can only exist within itself, greatly reducing the weight of the object. I have learned about your cooperation with the psychopaths in the equipment department. It seems that you are recently working together to research a small Gundam. Anyway, it's quite mysterious, but I think you also need this kind of thing. Ange said. This is indeed a good thing, but other hybrid forces will also fight for it, right? Mingfei admitted that this alchemy domain is indeed very useful to him at present, and the weight problem of the model armor may be solved. Of course they will fight for it, but they may not be willing to pay too much. A book on the construction of an alchemy domain still requires an alchemist to be responsible for studying it, and the world's top alchemy master is in our academy. Ange smiled. Who? Vice Principal, Nicholas Flamel. His ancestor is the only person in the world who has refined the Philosopher's Stone. But, I don't have money. Mingfei opened his mouth and finally said helplessly. Why not just recycle, rob it directly? From the perspective of Astates, this kind of alien technology or witchcraft should be forcibly reclaimed for him to keep. Don't worry about this. Ange handed over an envelope. Norma deposited $5 million in your student ID as a deposit and funds. Just hold up the sign, and the part exceeding $5 million will be supplemented by the college later. The envelope contained a golden invitation letter, signed Kartos.lu. Students in the college usually have a mission ID. Kartos is the name of the Weeper warrior who saved him from the orcs. Mingfei inherited his gene seed, as well as his identity and glory. But since the academy is paying, why don't you just take the photo, President? I don't mind just watching the show. Almost all the hybrids know me and the secret party behind me. If I raise the sign, it proves that this thing is valuable. Some people don't mind raising the sign a few more times to bid me more money. You are different. Your current identity is still relatively secret. Other hybrids don't know that you are a student of Castle for the time being. Angus said, taking out a bottle of red wine from the door slot. Would you like a drink? Celebrate the completion of our mission in advance? No, thank you. Mingfei shook his head and put away the envelope. Would you like to take me there, or would you like to walk there by myself? You can't show up with me now, but it's not necessary to let you walk to the auction house, which would be so cheap. A car will come to pick you up later. Angus smiled and glanced at the suitcase at Mingfei's feet. Also a reminder, no firearms or weapons can be brought into the auction house. Chapter 57 Auction House. Pennsylvania Road is a small road hidden in the downtown area, with the towering grey walls of skyscrapers on both sides. The sunlight is completely blocked by the high-rise buildings, and there is a hint of coolness on this narrow street. At the end of the road stands a huge square building, with no windows on the towering walls, only a row of large exhaust fans near the top turning slowly. Chicago Civic Opera House. This was once a place where celebrities gathered. 60 years ago, every night here was crowded with luxury cars and modern girls. Polite gentlemen came here with young female companions to enjoy elegant music, and waiters read the names of distinguished guests loudly. Unfortunately, it has declined now. Young people prefer to go to the cinema or shopping mall for dates. The Opera House has belonged to the glory of the last era. But today it has woken up again, and the blurred and flashy warm light is sprinkled on the red carpet with golden flowers blooming at the gate. Luxury cars are parked at the door, and the red tail lights are flashing one by one. Men in black tuxedos or evening gowns stepped out of the car, their hair was smeared with thick and shiny pomade, and the smile on their mouths was full of pride and pride. After getting out of the car, the men slightly adjusted their already meticulous formal clothes, turned around and took the slender hands wearing white velvet gloves that stretched out from the car, and gently pulled out the modern girl wrapped in mink and veiled, and her high heels made a crisp sound when they fell to the ground. The figures of men and women walking hand in hand towards the Opera House formed Chicago in the golden age of 1950. However, soon, another group of luxurious cars came, but the people who got off the cars added a little chaos to the opera. The people who got off the cars were all young handsome men and beautiful women with blonde hair and blue eyes. The perfect figures in suits and leather shoes revealed a more time-honored luxury and elegance. Those elegant men and women who seemed to have returned to the golden age seemed to not exist in their eyes at all, and there was only the magnificent and shining Opera House not far away. They ignored the smiling middle-aged men who came up to greet them, and walked into the Opera House with their girls or male companions, showing the waiters the black invitation with gold foil. In contrast, Mingfei, wearing a black windbreaker, seemed a bit out of place, looking more like a bodyguard. He refused to wear those big-name suits that were inconvenient to move, and didn't want to smoke those meaningless cigars. After asking the driver of the Lincoln car that brought him here to keep the box containing weapons, Mingfei showed the fiery red invitation and followed the crowd into the Opera House. The air was filled with various different perfumes, and at the end of the optically dim corridor was a heavy door that was large enough for 2 cars to drive side by side. 2 waiters stood on both sides, pushing open the door for the guests, revealing the grand and white giant space behind. 4 gorgeous dark red columns are like the ruins of the Parthenon in the Acropolis of Athens, standing tall in the 4 directions of this huge space. On the dome-shaped ceiling, 1 giant crystal chandelier after another dazes every inch of the corner with a layer of decadent gold. The dome and the 4 walls are painted with the war myth of the twilight of the Nordic gods, praising and narrating the great achievements of the gods. The ground is covered with wool carpets with green mandala patterns. The scarlet curtain hanging on the stage blocks the line of sight, as if preparing to stage a master opera. Nearly 1,000 seats occupy more than half of the Opera House, and each red velvet seat is marked with a brass nameplate. The orderly people held the invitation letters and quickly found a seat. For a time, the entire Opera House was full. Mingfei's eyes kept scanning the Opera House back and forth, not to appreciate the decorative style inside the Opera House, but to observe the overall terrain to find their best control position. This is one of Arstad's instincts, and he will be ready to fight at any time and anywhere. However, Mingfei did not find Ange on the first floor, nor did he see those arrogant men and women. I think they should be sitting in the VIP room on the 2nd floor. Why don't you give me a communication headset? It was the same thing at the hospital. There was no teamwork at all. Mingfei was a little dissatisfied. I remember an interesting story. A famous general and his wife were strolling on the street. Suddenly, he pointed to a cafe and said that this place was very good. The wife was very surprised. Her husband had always been a man who only knew how to fight and didn't know how to be romantic. How could he suddenly be so romantic? So she asked her husband what was good about this cafe. Her husband said that as long as I set up a few machine guns in this cafe, I can control the entire block. This is what the little angel looks like now. Jude May, wearing a burgundy dress and a light golden veil, stood in one of the VIP rooms on the 2nd floor, overlooking the scenes in the theater below. The sound of the potato chip girl chewing potato chips rang in the headset. It's unlikely that a fight will break out here. A bunch of young masters from European and American mixed blood families are here, and Angus is also here. Jude May said. Indeed, the handsome old man's time zero is the machine gun that controls the entire theater. Then we are just giving money to the little angel to calm the situation. Maybe we just need to go through the motions this time. Then isn't it a waste of money to take a photo of this VIP room for your high price? Anyway, it will look the same if you hang it on the roof. The full house of guests has already taken their seats. As the crystal chandeliers above their heads go out one by one, the voices of the guests' conversations also become lower. In the end, only 2 spotlights are left on the scarlet curtain of the stage. Their eyes and attention are also focused on the scarlet curtain, and their faces are filled with excitement and anticipation. A man in a black tuxedo unveiled the curtain and walked out. He stood on the stage holding a microphone and said with a smile, "Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. The 2007 Abraham Cultural Journey Auction of Sotheby's Directed Auction House will start in 10 minutes. Please hold your number plate. Your number plate will be the only identity certificate for this auction. All transaction fees will be withdrawn from the bank account reserved for your number plate. Please don't miss the things you like, because everything we will auction next is unique." The auctioneer paused. "Then now, please close your eyes." Mingfei was stunned. What trick is this? The guests sitting next to him closed their eyes and lowered their heads slightly. There was an inexplicable emotion brewing. "Please open your eyes," the auctioneer said again. Everyone opened their eyes at the same time, and it seemed as if the lights in the opera house were bright again. But it was no longer the crystal chandelier that illuminated the place, but hundreds of pairs of golden eyes. Boring, Mingfei made his own comment on this and held his own 88 sign. He didn't like this number very much either. All he had to do next was wait for the parchment book to be delivered, and then bid for it. 10 minutes passed quickly, and with the hammer in the auctioneer's hand, the auction officially began. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 58 Alchemical Weapons. The first auction item was brought up, covered with a piece of red velvet, and all the guests in the opera house stared at the tray in the auctioneer's hand. The first auction item tonight. The auctioneer carefully placed the tray on the display stand and bowed deeply to all the guests in the opera house. The past of this item is full of dark myths and even carries a curse. In the past, its owners, without exception, chose to commit suicide by jumping off a building to end their lives. This includes the 18th century Russian Princess Leonila Galitzin-Beretinsky. The auctioneer's voice became gloomy and low, describing the weirdness of this item. But the expectation on the guests' faces did not fade a bit because of this, but instead aroused their interest. Those who can come here are all mixed bloods, and they know very well that the so-called weirdness is not really weird. Seeing that the atmosphere in the venue has been mobilized, the auctioneer reached out and pinched a corner of the red cloth and gently pulled it apart, allowing the item on the plate to fully bathe in the spotlight of the opera house. But the precious item was not illuminated by the light. It was still dark and deep, like a bottomless black hole, lying quietly on the tray. Black or lode, also known as the Eye of the Creator. The auctioneer read out the name of the black diamond. It is said that in the ancient Indian region of Pondicherry, there was a grand Brahma temple, which enshrined the statue of Brahma, the god of creation in Hinduism, and its eye was inlaid with this most precious gem in India. There was a monk in the temple who was blinded by wealth and stole one of the eyes of the statue one night. It is said that Brahma was furious and cursed that anyone who possessed this black diamond would die. The deep and lightless diamond attracted the attention of all the guests, especially women. Gems are naturally fatal to women. They gently cover their snow-white breasts. Even with all kinds of terrible legends, they cannot extinguish the waves in their eyes trying to take the gem for themselves. When the Eye of the Creator was removed from the statue, it originally weighed 195 carats. In order to break the legendary curse, it was divided into 3 pieces and collected by private collectors. Since then, its owner has never had any accidents. The auctioneer said, carefully pinching the black gem with his hands, wearing white velvet gloves so that the guests in the opera house can get a better look at this mysterious gem. The main reason is that the alchemical field in the diamond has been lifted, otherwise even the hybrids can't withstand the stimulation of its field. Someone beside Mingfei whispered. He turned his head and saw the young girl sitting next to him, about 20 years old. Her eyes were like 2 faint golden lights. Clariza. Donna, you can call me Donna. She smiled and stretched out her hand to show her friendliness to Mingfei. Cartos. Lou. Mingfei thought for a moment and held the other's delicate hand. You are quite low-key, Donna smiled and took back her hand after the ceremony. The golden light in her eyes dimmed. I don't know since when, some people ignited their golden eyes to show off the purity of their bloodline, wanting to put pressure on others, making it like a masquerade. There is nothing to show off about this kind of thing. Mingfei disagreed. Indeed, maintaining this state looks impressive, but it is actually very tiring. Donna agreed. You said that there is an alchemical field in the diamond. Mingfei was more interested in these stories. Yes, an alchemical field that has been in a state of awakening. Ordinary humans who hold it are confused and stimulated by it, and have the illusion that they have become angels, wanting to flap their wings and fly, and then jump off the building and die. Donna said, but it should be harmless now. The alchemical field has been physically destroyed. If an alchemist wants to buy it back and study the incomplete alchemical field, it is not impossible, but the biggest use of this diamond at present is to make it into a necklace and wear it on the chest of some stunning beauty. Seeing that the atmosphere on the scene had reached a threshold, the auctioneer on the stage put the black diamond back on the tray and knocked it with the mahogany hammer. The owner of the black loaf gave its pricing power to our Sobeys auction house. This diamond is the smallest of the 3 black orbs. It weighs an astonishing 61.5 carats. It has no impurities and is of perfect color. Coupled with the mysterious story and history behind it, according to the jewelry appraisal of Sobeys auction house, the starting price of this black loaf will be $4 million, and each bid shall not be less than $100,000. $4 million for a stone. Mingfei shook his head. Only a fool would, but he didn't expect that as soon as the auctioneer finished speaking, a fool immediately raised the number plate impatiently. 4.1 million. However, the auctioneer did not make any move, but just smiled elegantly and looked at the entire opera house. 4.5 million. 4.8 million. 5 million. The bidding sounded like waves of money. In various storybooks, dragons are creatures who love to collect golden gems. They sleep in piles of treasures. Obviously, the hybrids inherited this habit. According to Wangers, half of the world's top art collectors are hybrids. In the end, this black loaf diamond was sold for $9 million. There are so many fools. Mingfei put down the sign in his hand and quietly waited for the appearance of the light as a stone alchemy field construction book. Indeed, for a poor man like me, I only have a minimum deposit of $2 million in my card. I'm afraid that the starting price of most auction items is more than this number. I just come here to watch the fun. Donna said with a smile. The auction continued. The second lot was a heavy topaz brick sculpture. Unlike the black loaf, there was no curse or legend. There was nothing special except a few dragon characters on the record. It was an art collection. The starting price was $4.2 million, and after several rounds of bidding, the transaction price was $9.5 million. The third item, the fourth item, until the sixth auction item caught Mingfei's attention. This time, the auction item was carried out of the scarlet curtain by 2 burly men. This item was also covered with red velvet silk, and it looked like a long flat box. I don't know if this is one of the auction items. Ladies and gentlemen, the next auction item is an alchemical weapon. Its forger, the auctioneer paused. Have you heard of Mir? Every time the trader introduced the auction item, he would tell a little story or rumor about it. When he said this, the golden eyes of many buyers who are familiar with Norse mythology stared at the auction item even brighter. Who is Mir? When the auction item was brought up, Mingfei vaguely guessed that the item might be a longsword or a great sword. But as for who Mir was in Norse mythology, he had no impression. He asked Donna beside him. Mir, the smartest god in the Azil tribe in Norse mythology, lived in a well under one of the 3 roots of the world tree, known as the Well of Wisdom. The main god Odin drank water from this well and gained wisdom. At the same time, he is also a blacksmith in mythology, a master of casting many things known to the main god Odin. Donna explained to him softly. On the stage, the auctioneer unveiled the red velvet cloth, and the spotlight fell on the long wooden box on the display stand that was carried up by 2 burly men. In the wooden box lay a 2-handed knight's sword, the hilt of which seemed to be made of silver thorn vines, and the crosspieces on both sides were bent towards the blade like wings. The blade was tough and slender, and the sharp black gold-like flowed along the 2 sides of the blade. When the strong white light of the spotlight fell on the sword, a faint green light emerged, as if it had turned into a waterfall pouring down. Alchemical longsword, unnamed, handle length 32 cm, blade length 163 cm, sword width 5.7 cm, normal total weight 53.7 kg, style similar to medieval cavalry 2-handed longsword. It is rumored that Mimir in the real world is a noble second-generation species, but he is indeed a true alchemist. This alchemical longsword was made by him, and his name is engraved in dragon characters on the sword. The auctioneer said, and the burly man who had not left behind took out the knight's longsword from the wooden box, holding the crossbar with both hands and lifting it up with difficulty. When the guests could see the dragon characters on the sword, they could also see the ferocious blue veins on his biceps and triceps. This alchemical longsword has an unknown alchemical field. When a hybrid with a lower bloodline uses this sword, the weight of the sword will increase several times or even dozens of times. When a hybrid with a higher bloodline uses it, the weight of the sword will remain unchanged. After the auctioneer finished speaking, his eyes quietly looked towards the VIP room on the second floor. Those young hybrids had stood up and walked to the windowsill, with eyes shining brighter than anyone else. Mingfei's heart began to beat bang bang, and his body seemed to resonate with the sword on the stage involuntarily. He quickly adjusted his mind and calmed down, but his eyes staring at the longsword in the center of the stage were also a little hot. He is also a good swordsman. He has always used chainsaw swords as weapons in the war group. That's because the war group was so poor that it only had chainsaw swords, and the only power sword was the exclusive weapon of the war group leader. Alchemical weapons of the alien, the quality should be very good. Mingfei has already picked up the sign and is ready to buy it first. The starting price is $7 million, and each increase must not be less than $200,000. The auctioneer knocked down the mahogany hammer. Please start bidding. Thank you for the 5,000 reward support from Big Bit. Dark. Thank you for the 2,500 reward support from Big Watermelon Adam. Thanks to Fenwashuashan, Zizaya Fushingo, Yuluoyu, Sovkot and many other angels of death for their support. Thanks to all the loyal astities for their monthly votes. Thank you. In addition, the comment function of this chapter may not be restored until tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Your comments and popular signs can only be seen by yourself and the author's background. Others cannot see it. I don't know whether it can be retained after the restoration. Chapter 59 Bidding, 3K 7 million alchemical weapon is still unknown. After all, Sotheby's auction house has not arranged a sword test session. If a steel column or iron ingot can be moved, the sharpness of this alchemical longsword can be demonstrated. However, looking at the exhausted look of the man holding the sword, it is estimated that the auction house has not found a hybrid with a high enough bloodline to really use this weapon. So the auctioneer will focus on the guests in the VIP room on the second floor. But even if there is a hybrid who can use this sword freely, what can it do? Times have changed. No matter how good your swordsmanship is, can it compare with the American A. Thompson Ripple Springed and RPG Greatsword? Therefore, in the eyes of the guests, the collection value of this alchemical weapon is far greater than its actual combat value, and it is not certain whether the second generation Mimir really exists. $7.3 million. Someone started to bid. 7.5 million. 8 million. The bids kept rising and soon soared to 10 million. 20 million. The understated voice that floated out of the external speaker for the first time directly doubled the bid. The guests looked up and saw the arrogant young man with golden eyes in front of the floor-to-ceiling glass of VIP room No. 4. He still ignored the nearly 1,000 eyes below, and only had eyes for the alchemical weapon on the stage. 20 million for the first time. After a few seconds of silence, the auctioneer saw that there were no more bids coming from the speakers on the second floor, so he raised the hammer in his hand and started the final countdown. 21 million. Someone raised a sign, and the two numbers 88 on the number plate were particularly bright. Donna looked at the boy next to her who was a little too young with a look of surprise. She thought that the other party and herself were just here to join in the fun, but she didn't expect that he would suddenly make a big splash and bid a sky-high price of more than 20 million. 30 million. The voice from the speaker in the VIP room upstairs was still understated. 40 million. Mingfei raised his sign again and also increased it by 10 million in one breath. The guests were in an uproar, their eyes fixed on the young Asian boy. They were not amazed by the price of $40 million, but his courage, the courage to compete with those young people of noble status on the second floor. 50 million. 60 million. As soon as the speaker finished speaking, Mingfei raised his card again without hesitation, determined to get this alchemical longsword. This is a sky-high price. Although the identities of the mixed bloods on the first floor are at least the shares and decision makers of some group company, with a net worth of hundreds of millions or billions. but they are not very willing to use $60 million, a not small amount of liquid funds, to buy a collection that has no great use other than collection. They are aware of their own bloodliner, and do not think that they can control this alchemical weapon that tests bloodliner like King Arthur pulled out the sword from the stone. The bidder in the VIP room No. 4 withdrew his eyes from the stage and glanced at the young man bidding with him below. He raised his eyebrows, did not continue to bid, and turned back to sit on the sofa chair in the middle of the room. I remember that there was $5 million in the little angel's card, right? Did you transfer the money to his account, Chip girl? It would be embarrassing if the auction house saw that his account balance was insufficient and asked him to go to the finance office. In the VIP room No. 9, May Jude was also watching the bidding. She lifted her light golden veil, revealing her beautiful face, and her red lips left a distinct and seductive mark on the edge of the tall wine glass. I just checked, and the name on the little angel's student ID card is Castle. We don't even have to send money, the secret party will pay for him. Chip Girl's voice in the headset was relaxed and cheerful, and she seemed very happy to save a lot of money. For an old auction house like Sotheby's, there are naturally ways to deal with bad behavior such as random bidding. When each guest who holds up a placard bids, the financial system will confirm in real time whether his account has corresponding actual funds. Of course, some accounts with special names are excluded. These accounts are all VIP guests of Sotheby's, so there is no need to worry about this. As long as they bid, it means that they really want to buy. The secret party? Is this old guy Ange going to spend a lot of money to tie the little angel to the dragon-slaying chariot? Jude May said. It's not his money that is being spent, but the secret party's. The secret party is a giant monopoly group that controls the European and American syndicates and trusts. The wealth flowing out of their fingernails is billions. Buying a tens of millions of dollars is simply a waste of money. Didn't Ange want the little angel to come forward as a weapon? Then he will definitely not be stingy with the money that the little angel uses to buy himself a weapon. $60 million for the third time. Deal. Congratulations to guest No. 88 for successfully bidding for this alchemical weapon. The auctioneer knocked down the hammer in his hand, and the deal was finalized. The audience burst into polite applause. You're so rich. Donna sighed softly. It's not my money. Mingfei told the truth, but in his heart he was already looking forward to the feeling of holding the long sword. His intuition told him that this alchemical weapon was more than just a simple one. With the sixth auction item being sold at the highest price so far, many people began to pay attention to who this young man No. 88 was, and at the same time, they were looking forward to what kind of fierce bidding would erupt when he made his next move. The seventh auction item was a bronze blowtorch that could spray out a very fierce flame. It was an alchemical product. The starting price was $900,000 and the transaction price was $7.6 million. The eighth auction item was the serifal knife, which was known as one of the world's weirdest weapons. Elizabeth Bartell in the 17th century gave it this name and used it to cut the throats of thousands of young girls. After identification, it was found to be an alchemical weapon with a complete and highly aggressive alchemical matrix field. This time, the guests in the VIP rooms on the second floor bid one after another. The starting price of $3 million soared to $32 million in rounds of bidding, and was finally bought by the guest sitting in room 7. Mingfei saw the familiar figure. It turned out that the person who bought the serifal knife was Angus. At this time, he was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling glass, talking and laughing with a beautiful young brown-haired woman. The 9th item, the 10th item, it was not until the 13th item was brought up that Mingfei picked up the sign again. The previous items all containing complete or complete alchemy fields, which are the mysterious knowledge and technology of the ancient dragon race, and today's 13th item is a book that records a method of constructing an alchemy field. The auctioneer lifted the red velvet cloth of the tray, and what was exposed under the spotlight was an ancient and broken book with about 20 pages. The pages were made of parchment, revealing a mysterious atmosphere from ancient times. It records a kind of alchemical field that is applied to an object, which makes the weight of the object lighter but the mass remains unchanged. To use a Chinese idiom to describe it, it is lifting a heavy weight as if it were light. This is an alchemical technology that can break the laws of physics. Imagine if this alchemical field is applied to weapons, or even military vehicles, rockets. The auctioneer was eloquent and introduced the alchemical field recorded in this ancient book. Is there a specific formula? For example, the specific numerical ratio of weight reduction? Someone asked loudly. The auctioneer showed an awkward but polite smile on his face. I'm sorry, Sotheby's auction house can only preliminarily interpret this general information about the alchemical field, and there are not enough conditions to construct the field. The guests laughed softly, and immediately realized that what the auctioneer said just now was just empty talk, commonly known as drawing cakes. Unless there is an alchemist master, there is little point in buying this ancient book, and it can only be used as a collection. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the auction of the ancient book of construction in the field of alchemy is now open. The starting price is $700,000, and each bid must not be less than $50,000. Compared to other things, this book is cheap. Mingfei was a little surprised and prepared to bid. One of the biggest problems with the model armor he wanted to equip is weight. If the weight can be reduced, the corresponding power auxiliary system can also be optimized and reduced. 850,000. 950,000. 1 million. The guests present were obviously not very interested in this book, and only a few people raised their placards to bid. But the guests on the second floor were more interested. They all came from a mixed blood family with a long history. Buying this ancient book of alchemy can at least enrich the family's foundation. The bidding price quickly soared to 10 million, but compared with the previous auction items, the range and speed of this bidding seemed relatively slow. Because the coquettish-old guy in room 7 never had the intention to bid. They all knew Ange's identity and the alchemy master who belonged to the same faction as him. With such conditions, the other party should not remain silent. 11 million. Seeing the price was silent, Mingfei raised his number plate and started bidding. His action immediately aroused the interest of the guests on the first floor. The young man used his courage and financial strength to bid to the VIPs on the second floor for the second time. However, those VIPs seemed to have lost interest in bidding. After a few seconds, the auctioneer looked around and saw that no one was bidding, so he had to raise the hammer and start the countdown. No. 88. 11 million once. 11 million twice. 11 million three. Just when the small wooden hammer in the auctioneer's hand was about to knock down, someone bid. 12 million. The bidding sound came from the loudspeaker in the VIP room No. 1. A black-haired young man stood in front of the glass with a smile on his face, and his golden eyes stared at Mingfei in the guest seats below. 15 million. Mingfei raised his plate and raised the price by 3 million. After a few seconds of silence, no one bid. The auctioneer began to count down as usual. No. 88. 15 million once. 15 million twice. 15 million three times. 16 million. As if it was agreed, the guest in VIP room No. 3 made a new bid at the time of the hammer falling. The guests began to think that things were getting interesting, and they all looked at the young man in No. 88 with an expression of watching a good show. Chapter 60 Majesty 20 million. Mingfei's expression remained unchanged, and he continued to bid. 21 million. Another bid was called out when the hammer was about to fall, still from the VIP room on the second floor. The guests were very interested, and they all thought that the young people of noble status on the second floor felt offended and deliberately teased and disciplined this little Arthur who wanted to pull out the sword from the stone. However, their behavior seemed very reasonable to the auction house, because before the hammer fell, anyone had the right to bid, and they could also pay the corresponding amount of money. 30 million. Mingfei frowned slightly and raised his number plate as usual. This was no longer a normal auction, it was a joke against himself. Although he had no psychological burden of spending the school's money, he didn't want to waste time playing with the naughty kids upstairs. When can I get the auctioned items? After bidding, he whispered to Donna beside him. Generally, you can only get the items you bought after the auction ends and the auction house's financial officer confirms that all the money has been paid. Donna lowered her head and said, because she was sitting next to Mingfei, the oppressive golden eyes on the second floor glanced at her, which made her very stressed. Is that so? It's really troublesome. Mingfei said softly, and after the 31 million bid upstairs ended, he raised the sign again. 50 million. After quoting this price, he closed his eyes silently. Donna suddenly shuddered, as if she felt a strong smell of blood from the young Asian boy beside her. She noticed that Mingfei's palm had already grasped the top of the wooden handle of the number plate. Damn, don't drag me in. Donna was a little panicked. Obviously, if someone deliberately drags the big like this next time, this Kartozlu will definitely throw the number plate up as a weapon without hesitation. But does he plan to use this to attack those super-rich second-generation hybrids on the second floor? The glass in their VIP room is bulletproof. After the price of 50 million was announced, the guests looked to their second floor, waiting to see which room would add another million to hit the bid of no. 88. The auctioneer looked a little helpless, but due to the rules, he still raised the small wooden hammer. No. 88. 50 million first time. 50 million second time. 50 million, third. Sure enough, when the third bid was about to fall, the speaker of VIP room no. 1 announced the new price. 51 million. At the moment when the syllable of the word million fell, a shrill scream suddenly sounded in the opera house. No one reacted to what happened. The guests looked at no. 88 inches confusion, thinking that little Arthur was angry and yelled out of control. Even the auctioneer was startled by the sudden scream and was a little at a loss. But Mingfei just sat still in his seat, eyes closed, expressionless. He actually threw it out. Perhaps only Donna, who was sitting next to Mingfei, understood what happened. Just as she guessed, the number plate 88 was thrown out by Mingfei as a throwing weapon. The speed was so fast that she couldn't even see the other party's movements clearly. If Mingfei's target was her, Donna probably wouldn't even know how she died. Fortunately, his target was VIP room no. 1. A crack appeared on the bulletproof glass in the room that was polished and dust-free. The black-haired young man stared at the number plate that penetrated the bulletproof glass in front of him with a gloomy expression. The number 88 looked particularly bright outside the glass. It was self-evident who the attacker was. He took a deep breath, and the golden flames in his eyes burned fiercely, searching for the daring murderer below. The other half-bloods who participated in the bidding also understood what happened. Although their expressions were different, soon, their eyes also lit up with dazzling golden light. 51 million for the first time. 5,100. When the auctioneer was counting down the bidding, a servant hurriedly ran up and whispered in his ear. The auctioneer's face changed, and he quickly put down the hammer in his hand, and his eyes found Mingfei in the guest seats. He grabbed the microphone. I'm sorry, gentlemen and ladies, because the attack of guest no. 88 has caused a great adverse impact. This auction is temporarily suspended. Attack. Temporarily suspended. The guests at the scene were very confused. When did that little Arthur launch an attack? Who was the target of the attack? They looked around and soon found the number 88 plate inserted on the glass outside the VIP room no. 1. I remember that the glass is bulletproof. When they looked at Mingfei again, their golden eyes were more frightened. The scream just now is the sound of him throwing the number plate. What a lunatic. Someone thought to himself. Those people on the second floor are all super-rich second-generation mixed bloods, and 2 of them are from the Hinkle family, known as the Underground King of Chicago. If you act on impulse, you will lose your life. In the face of such a provocative attack, the young mixed bloods all walked to the window and lit up their golden eyes. This is not just for individuals, they are a whole, the mixed blood family as a whole. For a moment, the dazzling golden light filled their eyes, and they looked down from a high place, as if golden gas lamps were lit. The breathtaking sight was like a mountain pressing on the guests on the first floor, and no one dared to look up at these distinguished young people. This is a suppression from Bloodliner, and this group of young people stands at the top of the mixed bloods here. They want to use their Bloodliner to bring severe panic and mental stimulation to the kid, and then slowly settle the attack. However, the expected scene of Mingfei kneeling and trembling in severe mental stimulation did not appear. Instead, the other party stood up from his seat and opened his eyes. The majesty of Astates cannot be offended or provoked, even by the mildest weeper. 3 times is the limit, and these naughty kids still play with him unscrupulously. Plop. The people in the guest seats seemed to be slapped hard by an invisible big hand, and fell to the ground from their seats, no longer elegant. But their next reaction was not to get up from the ground, but to sit on the ground and shiver with their heads buried in their seats, not daring to look Mingfei in the eye. Like a guiding light that cuts through the dark waves on the cliff, and like the sun that makes the stars pale, Mingfei's golden vertical pupils that seem to flow with golden lava seemed to be able to ignite and burn people. The opera hall was dead silent, and no one could utter a syllable. Mingfei raised his head, and the eyes of the top predators swept around the half-bloods with terrified faces. Although they still maintained their standing posture, their pride and courage had been completely shattered by the ruthless and cold gaze, replaced by fear and submission. The sweat soaked their expensive brand-name suits, and the suppression of their blood was clearly visible. In the VIP room no. 7. The graceful young woman fell at Anga's feet, her plump chest heaving violently, almost breaking the buttons of her long skirt. The old gentleman did not help her, but glanced at the angel of death, who was as majestic as a ghost below, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He took out a white handkerchief from his chest pocket and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Is it a bit too much? The 4.5 liters of DAC. Thank you for the blessing from the loving Father. The proud bloodline of the hybrids was shattered by a slap. The young people who thought they were lions became trembling lambs under the gaze of the angel of death below. The opponent was not the little Arthur who wanted to pull out the sword in the stone and become king, but Kratos who held the sword of Olympus to kill the gods. The young people's interest in teasing ended with their most humiliating and embarrassed appearance. Fenrir, the giant wolf that of Argodian, shook off its disguise and looked at them coldly. The guests sitting near Mingfei, including Clarice and Donna, felt like drowning people. They felt that the air became as sticky as gelatin and almost suffocated and collapsed. 50 million. Mingfei turned his head, his fiery eyes stared at the stage, and his cold words rang in the dead silent opera house. The auctioneer's legs were shaking, and he held onto the display stand tightly to avoid collapsing on the ground. The other party's gaze seemed to have turned into a substantial sharp knife on his neck. This was not a bid, but an order. Now the rules of the auction have been handed over to Mingfei, and no one dared to raise a sign to bid under such pressure. In fact, even if Mingfei just walked down and took the things, no one present could stop him. 50 million, the first time. The auctioneer raised the small wooden hammer in his hand with difficulty. At this time, he only felt that the small wooden hammer seemed to be heavy. The second time, deal. The small hammer in the auctioneer's hand fell on the display stand. He didn't even dare to say the third time, and directly made the deal. Mingfei raised his head again, and after glancing at the frightened children in the private room upstairs, the golden light in his eyes gradually faded. The weight of the mountain hanging over the hearts of nearly 1,000 people in the opera house also lightened, but even so, most people still hugged their heads and lay on their chairs, not daring to look up. I'm sorry. Mingfei said softly to Donna, who was beside him, with a flushed face and breathing heavily like a drowning person regaining fresh air. Then, he walked straight down from the guest seats. This auction was undoubtedly temporarily interrupted, and many guests suffered a lot of mental trauma. Sotheby's auction house had to postpone the auction time of the next few auction items for half a month. The only one who was happy was probably the seller of the light as a feather alchemy field construction book. The starting price of $700,000 was raised to 50 million, which was several dozen times higher. In the financial room of Sotheby's auction house, the auction house assistant and financial manager were trembling with fear to handle the subsequent transaction procedures of the auction items. They didn't even dare to look directly at the young man sitting on the sofa who affected the entire auction. Even if the eyes were no longer flowing with blazing lava, but calm water. Mr. Liu, your payment has been completed. Now these two items belong to you. The financial manager came over respectfully and bowed, not daring to look Mingfei in the eye. Yes. Mingfei nodded, stood up and walked to the display table, his hand reaching out to the silver two-handed longsword lying quietly in the mahogany box. The vine-like hilt of the sword felt cold and smooth to the touch. He tried to swing it with one hand twice. The weight of more than 40 kilograms was still light for him. Obviously he had passed the alchemical field of the sword's bloodline test. He could even feel the machine soul inside the sword, or the living spirits singing, as if warmly welcoming him as the new owner. The auction house staff were not surprised that this guest could easily wield this alchemical weapon. The pair of golden knives that shocked the audience just now had already proved the high purity of the young guest's bloodline. The blade is a bit thin, and it would be even more perfect if a drop of holy blood was added. Mingfei looked at the crossbar of the longsword in the shape of two wings, and felt that it would be even more perfect if a drop of bright red holy blood could be added in the middle of the crossbar. Let's get the machine, no, it's hot Alheim, and let them see if they can put it up. Mingfei thought. Is there anything I can try this sword on? He looked at the financial manager who was huddled in the corner and asked. I can try anything in this room, as long as you don't try it on me. The financial manager showed a smile that was uglier than crying. Mingfei glanced at the things in the financial office, thought about it and decided to forget it. He had to find an alien to test the sword. He wrapped the alchemical longsword with the red velvet silk in the wooden box, took the ancient book of the alchemical field in another wooden box, and walked out of the room. Angus leaned against the corridor, his hands in his pockets, humming an aria. Performed perfectly. After tonight, the whole mixed blood world will feel your edge. He smiled and praised. I want to be the flag. Lumenfei said, raising the long sword in his hand. This should be mine, right? Of course, the school directors won't mind spending money to buy a new weapon for our flag. That's good. I remember you said you were going to meet your old friend? Lumenfei asked. Yes, he's in this auction house. Come with me. Angus smiled. The two walked through the VIP passage of the opera house. The two sides of this long and narrow corridor were full of replicas of famous paintings, from Van Gogh's Sunflowers to Monet's Monet Garden of Penuel. The light emitted by the crystal chandeliers cast a crimson veil between blood and roses. When he walked to Leonardo da Vinci's Battle of Anghiari, Angus stopped. A crimson door hidden in the wall opened, and Lumenfei saw a skinny old man wearing round-framed glasses and a cowhide hat with a rolled brim. The other person looked like a retired Texas Ranger, with a worn badge on his hat. The old man's pale golden eyes were also looking at him. After a while, he smiled gently. It seems that you have found someone who can take over your job, Ange. I haven't retired yet, Henkel. Ange introduced with a smile. Fedris von Henkel, also known as Fast Hand Henkel, the world's top sharpshooter and cowboy, my old friend and old rival. Lumenfei, an S-level freshman at Castle Academy, the most talented dragon slayer in history. I have just seen his brilliance through the TV screen. Henkel stretched out his skinny palm to Lumenfei. Hello, Lumenfei. Lumenfei returned the greeting. I know what you want to ask. Let's go in and talk. I have prepared the best island whiskey. Henkel said. There are 9 high-backed leather chairs in the room, and a handsome young man is sitting on each chair. They were well dressed, and each wore a heavy and plain silver ring on their index finger. On the ring face were different totems, representing their respective family emblems. It was obvious that their identities were quite extraordinary, but their expressions were full of anxiety and panic. Especially after seeing the young man who entered the room with the old cowboy, this emotion reached its peak. It seemed as if he had returned to the moment in the opera house just now, when he was stared at by the terrifying pair of golden vertical pupils. Lumenfei also noticed that they were the mixed blood who had just sat in the VIP room on the 2nd floor. He just glanced at them without lingering for too long. I'm very sorry for offending the young people in the family just now. Please believe that they have no ill will towards you. Hanja's smile on his face was restrained a little, and he said in a deep voice. Lumenfei did not deny it. Is this the young representative of your generation? Angus glanced around at these well-dressed young people. Yes, they are all outstanding young people from each family. Some of the old guys of your generation and mine have died, and some are lying in bed with oxygen tubes in their throats. Dragon blood is not a good thing for us. Diseases will not take our lives, but organ failure cannot be changed. Hanja said, looking at Ange with envy, but you are as agile as a young man. Let's put aside the small talk, Hanja. You know I have something serious to ask you to do. Ange sat down at the table and ignored the young people. Of course, I know you are here for the Emperor. Hanja took the whiskey from the ice bucket and poured a glass for Ange and Lumenfei. I really don't understand why you have to trouble these cruel monsters. Of course it's revenge. Ange raised his glass to greed. Anyway, I have enough revenge to take, and I don't mind acting this one. You should have news about them. Lumenfei remained silent and listened quietly to the conversation between the old people. It's just what I heard. I can't guarantee its authenticity or accuracy. Henkel also filled his glass with whiskey. Name your price, Henkel. This is a free service, Ange. Henkel waved his hand, drank the whiskey in the glass, and took out a file back from under the table. Take it back to the college and open it to study it slowly. I don't want to discuss its origin with you here, nor do I want to analyze the problem for you. Free things are often the most expensive, Henkel. Tell me, what do you want? Ange took the file back and pinched the thickness with his fingers. Talk to these young people. They are the real protagonists. Henkel poured another glass of whiskey. Ange narrowed his eyes and turned his gaze back to the young people who were ignored across the table. Hello, Principal Ange. We want to cooperate with you. Some of them regrouped and showed a standard reception smile on their faces. Cooperation? Do you want to study at Castle College? Although you were a little old, our admission requirements can be appropriately relaxed. Ange raised his eyebrows. It's not about enrollment, it's about cooperation with the entire secret party. The young man shook his head, with a very friendly smile on his face. Times are changing, and the history of the dragon race will eventually come to an end. I quite agree with your idea, but it will be more troublesome to realize it. Angus smiled. So we can cooperate. You are definitely the most powerful and most likely to win the history of the dragon race. We are willing to pay generously. When the young man said this, he glanced at Mingfei, who was sitting in the corner of the table with his eyes closed in thought. For example, we can join the school board with a huge donation and fully support you, instead of letting Frost, the jumping fighting sheep, block you in all aspects. I quite agree with your analogy. Then I wonder what kind of benefits I need to pay to you shareholders who support me behind the scenes? Angus said with a smile. Share power, share the whole world. This is the reward we hope to get for our generosity. We are far better than humans. After the end of the history of the dragon race, the young man took a deep breath, his face became sacred and fanatical. We are the top of the evolutionary tree, and we will become the new dragon race together. The new dragon race. Angus nodded, his smile unchanged. Our cooperation has failed, boys. The young people were stunned. As Angus' voice fell, something seemed to open its eyes, accompanied by the sharp whistle of a sharp blade cutting through the air. The valuable mahogany long table split in half in an instant, and Mingfei, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, appeared in front of them like a ghost. The alchemical sword worth $60 million was across the throat of the young man, and his fanatical look had not even faded. After only a few dozen minutes, the young hybrids felt the horror of Mingfei again. But this time it was not the pressure from bloodliner, but the coldness called death. 3.5k. Chapter 62 Unexpected Interception. Boom. The long mahogany table that was cut in half fell to the ground with a bang, stirring up a gust of wind. Don't be so impulsive, Mingfei. Angus said with a headache. He didn't know, and he appeared beside the first leather chair, holding a folding knife about 20 centimeters long in his hand, with the unique pattern of Damascus steel all over the blade. The blade of the folding knife blocked the blade of Mingfei's alchemical sword. The young man on the chair didn't dare to move, and looked at the two sharp blades on his neck with fear. Hey, Angus, it's better to let your students calm down. Hanja said in a deep voice, with veins throbbing on his forehead and the golden light in his eyes becoming more and more blazing. But he raised his hands, holding two golden old-fashioned revolvers, both pointing at the back of Mingfei's head. The barrel of the alchemical revolver. Texas Dawn has been pressed down. This is the legendary weapon for him to write his glorious mixed-race history into the history of the Hanja family. I have tried very hard to calm him down, otherwise all of you young family representatives will have your head split apart. Ange sighed softly and looked at the young man who said he wanted to become the new dragon clan. He still maintained the posture of opening his hands, as if he wanted to bathe in the divine light. But the fanatical look on his face was frozen forever, and his pupils were gradually dilating. Only Ange and Hanja noticed the fact that the young man was dead. There was a hidden red line on his neck. Mingfei, it's almost done. I think they should have learned their lesson. Ange said softly. Mingfei glanced at the 8 young men shivering in the cowhide chairs, and then looked at Ange, who looked helpless, and put away the alchemical sword that was not stained with blood. I hate you. He said coldly, your superior attitude disgusts me. You don't even see the existence of ordinary people in your eyes. Although I haven't seen a real dragon yet, if you want to become that kind of thing, then I don't mind purifying you in advance. The new generation of elites, the young representatives of the Henkel family trembled. They are all excellent mixed bloods, but their arrogance had been completely shattered dozens of minutes ago. And now, the cold sword called death is on their necks. Indeed. Tell your children more about the simple and unpretentious truth of life, Henkel. Angus put away his folding knife. The fancy investment theories of Wall Street are useless here, let alone talking about the new dragon race. He glanced at Mingfei, who looked indifferent, and continued. Whether born or self-proclaimed, they are all enemies. The room was dead silent, and the young people didn't even dare to breathe, and their shirts were soaked with cold sweat. Their life and death depended on the thoughts of the old and the young. Hanja was also aware of this. He held the Texas Dawn tightly in his hands and pointed the gun at Mingfei. After a while, he put down the gun. Take your things and leave quickly, don't wait for me to regret and shoot you coldly. Hanja said in a deep voice. In front of Ange's word spirit. Time 0, even his word spirit. Holy judgment, which is said to have a 100% hit rate, will be cut in half. What's more, there is another such a fierce young man. He has no chance of winning 2 against 1. Either he drags him to a 1-for-1 exchange. But the other one will definitely kill all his young representatives. The family without a leader will soon be in chaos. And no matter who he drags to die with him, he will offend the secret party. With the greedy nature of Frost of the Gattuso family, he must be very happy to accept the assets he has won since the Western pioneering era. I'm sorry, Hanja, our meeting this time is not very pleasant. Anj spread his hands helplessly. Originally there was a paid intelligence, but now I'm not in the mood to sell it to you, go away. Hanja said coldly. That's really sad news, I hope we can cooperate again in the future. Let's go, Mingfei. Angus picked up the file bag that fell on the ground and pushed the door open. Mingfei left without looking back, and never looked at anyone in the room again. The room was dead silent. Suddenly, the young people heard a hissing sound like a leak. Wagner, the youngest ruler of the Morgan family who was calling for the new dragon clan, the red line on his neck became clearer and clearer, and fine blood beads spurted out of the red line. He died a long time ago. Hanja said coldly, putting the two alchemical revolvers back to his waist. The young people looked at each other and saw the cold sweat that kept oozing out of their foreheads. They realized that one of their companions had died. Hanja stood up with a cane and walked to the body that was stiff in place. Looking at the fanatic look left on his handsome face, Hanja cursed in a low voice. Idiot. So, just let it go. That, he killed Wagner. Someone whispered. That's his stupidity, remember this lesson, don't mess with Angus and the madman next to him in the future. Hanja took off the silver ring on the finger of the corpse and threw it to one of the young men. Let the Morgan family choose another spokesperson within 5 days, don't let that arrogant idiot from Wall Street come again. Wait and see for a while, and pay attention to the actions of the death-level Mingfei. Hanja looked at the unclosed scarlet door in the room. If they can survive tonight, you send someone out. A young man heard this and showed a hopeful look on his face. I'm not that stupid, but the information about the Emperor is not that easy to get. Hanja said coldly. The silver Porsche made a cheerful roar and drove on the bustling streets of Chicago with bright lights and wine. You're a little too impulsive, even if he claims to be the new Dragon Clan, you shouldn't kill him. He's from the Henkel family. While waiting for the red light, Ange bit a cigar and lit it for himself. This old guy who had been driving without a license for more than 100 years actually became obedient and obeyed traffic rules. He should be glad that he is the only one who speaks wildly, otherwise, everyone else would be purified with him. Mingfei said coldly while holding the alchemical sword. In front of an Aristides, he said that he wanted to become a new alien. Looking back now, Mingfei was even amused by the behavior of that heretic. Well, you're right to some extent. Ange's expression became cold. The biggest enemy has not yet awakened, and there are already hybrids ready to divide the world and become our enemies. You do have this power of deterrence to ensure that when we face a real dragon fight to the death, no one will stab us from behind. The nature of the dragon bloodliner is to fight to the death. Only the dragons with the best bloodliner can survive and improve their genetic advantages step by step. I'm not interested in fighting each other. At present, my enemies are only the damn aliens and heretics. Mingfei frowned. There seemed to be 2 trucks of unknown origin following the car. Hectares, did Henkel send people to stop us? Ange also noticed the 2 trucks. As trucks, they seemed to have been modified, and their speed was comparable to that of this sports car. Boom. At this time, the green beast hiding in the dark waiting for the opportunity to prey suddenly rushed into the main road from the alley beside the road, biting their Porsche tightly. What a joke. Why can something like this be driven on the street? Doesn't the Chicago government care? Even Angus was shocked when he saw the green beast suddenly rushing out. Because the other party was a wheeled light armored vehicle speeding. On the roof of the car, a masked thug wearing combat uniforms and heavy bulletproof vests was moving the black M2 heavy machine gun and pointing the muzzle at the Porsche without a hood that Mingfei was riding in. Chapter 63 Cutting Iron. But the roar of the bolt pistol sounded before the roar of the M2 heavy machine gun. Even though the Porsche and the armored vehicle were at different accelerations, there were a lot of factors that affected the shooting error, and the machine gunner was very cunning and hid his body behind the M2 heavy machine gun as much as possible. Bang 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 bang. Mingfei's eyes flashed with golden light, and he pulled the trigger of the bolt gun, firing all the metal storm bombs. Pop. The machine gunner's head was the first to be blown apart, and the flying flesh and brain fragments were scattered in the wind. The second was the 12.7mm caliber Browning M2 heavy machine gun and 40mm grenade launcher mounted on the roof. These 2 weapons that could tear this Porsche into pieces exploded and were scrapped. Finally, there was the M240 machine gun at the rear of the car. Although the caliber was only 7.62mm, it was also a weapon that should not be underestimated. Wow. Your word spirit is the holy judgment. Angus exclaimed, holding the steering wheel with one hand, and the shining folding knife cut into his wrist. What is the effect of the holy judgment? Mingfei asked. Ignore defense and hit the target 100%. The word spirit of the fast-hand Henkel just now is, fuck. I'm teaching my students in person now. Angus cursed the quintessence of Chinese culture, and the cigar fell from his mouth, burning a small hole in his expensive custom-made suit. His lecture was interrupted by the brutal collision of the armored vehicle. This new 8-wheeled armored vehicle designed for the U.S. military's 21st century battlefield, the Stryker Basic Model M1126, chose to crash into it with its own solid composite armor after its weapon system was scrapped. Angus stepped on the accelerator, and the engine made a bursting roar, pulling the speed of this Porsche 911 to 90 miles per hour, and immediately pulled away from the armored vehicle. If my Porsche was not produced in 2007 but in 1942, I would definitely let this little fragile car know what a real armored car is. Angus scolded. Does the Porsche produced in 1942 have a hood? Mingfei stood up from the car with the alchemical sword in his hand, and the golden light in his eyes was like rolling and boiling waves. Add a hood? Add armor. Angus corrected, the German Tiger P heavy tank during World War II was the work of Dr. Porsche. It's a pity that it is not sold to the public now. I have to say that you stand very steadily, but it's a pity that I don't have an RPG in the car, otherwise I could let you shoot it. Mingfei stood on the rear of the Porsche that was traveling at a speed of 100 miles per hour. The biting cold wind was like blowing on an iron tower and could not shake it at all. Although this behavior of standing on a convertible as a target is likely to repeat the mistakes of a certain American president, Mingfei is not afraid at all. The foreboding ability of the prophetic psychic power is being kept open. No matter how far away they are, as long as the bullets are fired at him or Ange, Mingfei can immediately sense it. After the Battle of the Sacred Heart Maria Hospital, Mingfei quickly confirmed and accepted the fact that he had obtained the prophetic psychic power. The Gene Father St. Gervais was a powerful prophetic psychic. When using psychic power, he could feel that his consciousness was wrapped in a sacred and soft golden light, not the erratic and strange subspace curtain. The ability used to kill the machine gunner just now was misfortune. Mingfei reversed the fate of the machine gunner, and the first bullet that should have hit the N2 heavy machine gun hit the weakest part of his defensor. His forehead was blooming. His sight passed the M1126 that was chasing him, and looked at the two white refrigerated trucks following behind, with smiling pigs printed on the front of the trucks waving at him. But there was no one in the driver's seat, and there was no driver in either truck. The loudspeaker on the front of the truck reminded Mingfei of bad memories. "Drive out of the city," he said. Of course. Angus was excited, maintaining at proper speed to catch the Stryker armored vehicle behind him. This made him feel a little uncomfortable. They didn't need to escape now, they just needed to find a quiet place to get rid of the other party. So he couldn't have a hearty drag race. People on both sides of the street exclaimed and took out their mobile phones to shoot the armored car chasing the luxury sports car. It was close to midnight in Chicago, and Angus drove all the way into the south side of Chicago. Fuller Park, one of the areas with the highest crime rate in Chicago, is a common place for criminal activities such as shootings and robberies. It is the kind of place where life should be happy and bullets should be full. A luxury Porsche sports car attracted the attention of many residents who are still wandering the streets late at night, including gang members such as motorcycle gangs. This aroused their interest, and immediately some high-spirited guys twisted the accelerator and wanted to have a chase. The armored vehicle whizzing past immediately dispelled all their thoughts. The executive officers in Chicago have arrived and are ready to join us. Angus put down his phone and slowed down the Porsche to 60 miles per hour. It is illegal to use a mobile phone while driving in the United States, and Angus probably doesn't care about such things. Moreover, they are now approaching the entrance to the highway in the suburbs of Chicago. Even the street lights on this road are in a state of disrepair, so there are naturally no surveillance cameras. Those two refrigerated trucks, I don't know if they're mass-produced Deadpools, but they definitely won't be ice cream or refrigerated steaks. Let's get rid of them here. Yeah. Mingfei responded lightly, and then jumped down from the rear of the car with the alchemical longsword in hand. Hey! Don't show off in this way. Angus hurriedly stepped on the brakes, and the teeth-grinding harsh friction sound spread far in the dark night. The Porsche also dragged for a long distance before the speed dropped from 60 miles per hour to naught. Mingfei just rolled over a few times to get rid of the inertia and stood steadily in the middle of the road. In the distance of the road, the Striker M1126 armored vehicle was rushing towards him at full speed. Although it was a light armored vehicle, that was from the perspective of a tank. Even a hybrid would be crushed to death and turned into a pulp when facing this steel monster rushing at full speed. But Mingfei looked calm, holding the sword. The golden lava flowing in his eyes became blazing and dazzling in the dark night, and his blood seemed to boil. The spirit of the alchemical sword in his hand let out a cheerful hiss, and a gorgeous blue light emerged, pouring down from the slender blade like a waterfall, and then it materialized. In less than a few seconds, this alchemical sword, which was less than 6 centimeters wide, turned into a two-handed giant sword with a width of more than 20 centimeters. The materialized blue light was like jade as the widened sword body, but it did not take shape. The flowing light is like the rippling water of a lake under the moonlight, and it is also like the stars and nebulae in the universe that are constantly moving. The green light floating in the air is like flying fireflies. Unlike the lightsabers used by the Force warriors in Star Wars, it is not a manifestation of future technology and craftsmanship. It is a perfect work of art that should be displayed in an exhibition hall so that the world can have the opportunity to witness its beauty. Is this your fighting form? Mingfei whispered to himself. That's great. I hope we can better purify the aliens here for the Empire in the future. Jin Liu. This giant sword has its own name. Since it recognizes itself as its master, it must fight for the Emperor with it. Several sharp brake sounds sounded in succession, and 4 black Mercedes-Benz cars of the same model drove down from the entrance of the highway, and a group of people in black windbreakers holding guns rushed out of the cars. The executive department specialists who came to support rushed all the way in the opposite direction on the highway, but when they arrived at the scene, they found that the principal was lighting the cigar in his mouth. And he looked a bit relaxed. Didn't he say he needed support? Principal. The specialists were a little puzzled, but soon they spotted a figure holding a huge, glowing sword that was surprisingly large not far ahead. That's Mingfei, the S-level freshman in our academy. Angus said. That S-level is that armored vehicle. Everyone disperse immediately. The owls in the executive department were about to say something, but soon they heard the deafening roar coming from not far ahead. Don't panic, Mingfei should be able to handle it. But you still need to be prepared to save him if he fails to show off. Angus smiled and exhaled a thick smoke ring. Show off, save the situation. The corners of the mouths of the well-trained specialists in the executive department twitched. What the hell are these words? But they didn't have time to figure it out. The next scene made them widen their eyes. Mingfei, the S-level freshman, holding that beautiful giant sword, rushed towards the steel chariot that was also rushing towards him. Damn it. Even if it's an S-class, you can't collide with the armored vehicle with your body. If you do this, the only thing we can do is to put your body in a bucket. The specialists' eyelids twitched, and some of them burst out high syllables in their throats, ready to deal with the tank running over the S-class corpse and rushing towards them. But the next second, the dragon text he was chanting stopped abruptly. If Mingfei was still the Astartes wearing solid power armor, he wouldn't mind a passionate collision with this armored vehicle and then smash it to pieces. But now he doesn't have this idea. Step Mingfei's rapid charge suddenly turned into an exciting arrow step, holding the gorgeous moonlight giant sword in both hands and facing the armored vehicle that wanted to crush him in an attacking posture. Locking arms, changing steps, moving swords, and slashing upwards. Mingfei's series of actions were done in one go, like an elegant sword dance. The green light of the emerald drew a beautiful trace in the darkness, and then there was a crisp sound like silver beads falling on a jade plate, accompanied by a shrill scream. The entire striker armored vehicle was split in two by Mingfei's sword, and turned into 2 halves. The cut surface was as smooth as a mirror, perfect and without any marks. 2 scarlet strokes appeared in the cab, one driver's arm was cut off, and the other driver and the armored vehicle were split in half. Mingfei stood still, and the 2 pieces of the armored vehicle's corpse did not touch him at all, but only set off a gust of wind, blowing up his black windbreaker. Chapter 64 Greetings. The composite reactive armor rubbed against the ground, sparkling sparks and harsh friction sounds. The striker armored vehicle that could defend against 155mm shell fragments was split in half by a sword. The specialists of the executive department were stunned in the cold wind, and they couldn't believe that the scene before their eyes was something that humans could do. Even if there were words, so what? They had been in the executive department for many years, and had carried out missions with several ace specialists. They had seen powerful and high-risk words such as Junyan, Jianyu, and Lady Guy. But none of them could compare to this S-class sword handsome boy. Moreover, the S-class did not use words at all, relying purely on their own strength. Even if they were given the extraordinary weapon in the other party's hand, they didn't think they could be as accurate and calm as the S-class, who was dancing on the tip of a knife. Well done. Angus smiled and applauded, and the admiration and love in his eyes were not concealed. There is one who is not dead yet. Control him immediately, don't let him commit suicide. The specialists reacted from their shock and immediately sent people to rush to the driver who was not dead in the wreckage of the armored vehicle. There are 2 more freezer trucks. The enemy is unknown. Be prepared to support the S-class. Although everyone was saying this, they knew that the S-class could split the armored vehicles, and naturally it could also split the freezer trucks. But, the 2 freezer trucks seemed to be frightened and stopped far away. The rustling sound of the claps came from the loudspeakers on the front of the car, but in less than a second, the 2 loudspeakers were blown up by Lumenfei's gun. He threw the bolt pistol casually, he didn't have time to put the bolt pistol back into his belt, and rushed straight to the 2 freezer trucks that suddenly shook violently. Go forward to support the S-class. The specialists immediately realized that something was wrong, and rushed forward with various firearms loaded with live ammunition, ready to shoot at any time. SHHH, a sharp black claw pierced the thick iron sheet of the freezer truck. But then, time seemed to have pressed the stop button. Or in other words, pressed the delay button that slowed down the speed by 50 times. The 2 white freezer trucks were about to bloom black flowers, and the petals were undoubtedly the dirty alien named Deadpool. But the blooming process was delayed by Yamcha's word spirit. Time 0. He walked slowly, playing with the folding knife in his hand. Lumenfei was slightly startled, not because he was shocked by Yamcha's ability, but because he remembered the man on a rainy night a few months ago. Then he turned into a killing machine again, and the beautiful blade of the Jinyu greatsword painted on the freezer trucks. The exquisite and elegant sword dance harvested the lives of the aliens in a stagnant state. Until the last blade fell, 83 seconds had passed. And pressed the cancel button, and time resumed its normal flow. In the reference system of the executive department specialists, only less than 2 seconds had passed. Ding! The crisp sound was stretched quite long, the shells of the 2 freezer trucks were broken, and the black flowers bloomed, but the petals were made of the remains of the aliens and black blood. The executive department specialists who were about to fire their guns froze in their places, shaking their heads and blinking to make sure they were not hallucinating. Then, they belatedly remembered the principal's words, and continued to check whether there were any monsters that were not dead. Several specialists climbed to the cab that had not been chopped into pieces to collect GPS data. Perfect, I'm wondering if I should just let you graduate directly. I've never seen a warrior like you, it's like you were born that way. The folding knife in Anger's hand slipped into his sleeve, and he chuckled. There are still many stories and knowledge worth reading in the academy, and I haven't formed my own club yet. Lumenfei said, staring at the Jinyu in his hand. The Jinyu grey sword harvested the lives of dozens of dirty aliens, but the blade flowing with green light was not stained with a trace of black blood, and it was still beautiful and flawless. There is no doubt that this is a very perfect alchemical weapon. As the battle ended, the brilliance gradually faded, and the moonlight sword, which was more than 20 centimeters wide, returned to its original slender silver blade at less than 6 centimeters. Indeed, college life is wonderful, and everyone should enjoy this time. I graduated from Cambridge in 1897, and even now I often go back there, but unfortunately I can only be a tourist. No one on campus knows me, and the evidence of my study there has been erased by time. The students coming and going no longer discuss poetry, religion and art, but are focused on how to find a high-paying job in the city of London. Sorry, it seems to be off topic. Angus smiled apologetically. It's time to ask the gentleman driving the armored vehicle what he thinks of this attack. The Striker armored vehicle is not something that can be bought casually on the black market. The attackers are either from General Dynamics Land Systems or from the Pentagon. The executive commissioners gave the driver whose arm was cut off a simple hemostatic treatment to prevent him from dying from excessive blood loss. Okay, sir. Please tell us, whose orders did you follow to drive this Striker and bite us? Ange smiled and was as polite as a gentleman. A monster. You are all monsters. The driver, with a fierce face and a burly figure, was frightened like a child who had done something wrong, and his whole body was trembling. His face and lips were both livid, and it was unknown whether it was because of the pain of the broken arm or the fear of seeing Lumenfei. Notify Professor Masashi Toyama, he may have to work overtime tonight. Ange sighed, I don't have much experience in interrogating the wounded. Okay. When the two commissioners were about to walk over to lift the driver up, they suddenly saw a golden edge flashing in the depths of the other's eyes. They immediately stepped back and raised the rifles they'd just put down. Ahem, the driver's body twitched strangely, and the golden light in his eyes became more and more blazing. Fire. The sound of guns being loaded was neat and crisp, and all the executive department specialists pointed their guns at the mutated driver, ready to fire and kill. Wait. Mingfei frowned slightly and raised his hand to signal them to stop. The specialists looked at each other, and then obeyed the order and slightly lowered the muzzles of their guns that were ready to fire. This S-class left such a deep impression on them that they could even feel a reliable sense of security from him. Even if this guy with a twitching and deformed body suddenly turned into a dragon, they believed that the S-class could easily kill it. After twitching for more than 10 seconds, the driver's body stopped twitching and his expression was no longer distorted. When he opened his eyes, the blazing golden light swept through everyone like a sharp blade, and finally stopped on Mingfei. The corners of the driver's mouth opened, revealing a weird arc. Hello, Mingfei. The Emperor asked me to say hello to you. The author has to work during the day, not full-time, but will work hard to write. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 65. Reward and Thanks. There are too many brothers who have donated to support the Holy Temple these days, so I specially opened a separate chapter to thank them. My head is a little dizzy, and it is difficult to add more chapters to thank them. First of all, I would like to thank Bit. Dark, the 4.5 leaders of the Father, for their donations and support. Thank you for the blessing at the Father. I owe the Father 4 more chapters. Then I would like to thank Eming Xijan, Wan Jesus Hang, GC Embarrassment, Sticker, Book Friend 201732318195005. This name cannot be displayed. 233, Tissue JGM, Watermelon Adam, Krmuhub, Sleep If You Can't Kill, Gyorian, Prince Water Demon, 616, I'm almost driven crazy by just picking a name, Hard Like Coconut Naturals Blab, My Wife 13, Book Friend 20190518194539484, CNU, Falling Wood and Flowing Gold, Book Friend 20206181250217222. She is happier than fireworks. Book Friend 201705193364806. Book Friend 2021103211244. Dimension, live up to St. Giles, Linkongbin Jingzi, Yu, Bachelor of Bargy Pavilion, Home Pacific, all the loyal fighting angels for their reward and support. Thanks. I also thank my battle brothers for their monthly ticket support. P.S. The prototype is the heirloom sword in the Soul series. Chapter 66. Gloria. The male armored vehicle driver's voice became female, and he greeted Mingfei in fluent Chinese without any accent. It was like he had become a completely different person. The specialists in the executive department all felt a sense of pressure, and the sight of the pair of golden knives seemed to cut through their bodies like a sharp blade. But fortunately, it didn't last long, and the sight was focused on their S-level. Mingfei suppressed his physical instinct to behead the other party with a sword, and took a deep breath. You have 10 seconds. Without the gene detection nerve, it would be impossible to shoot first and ask questions later, and he really wanted to know the origins of these evil heretics. Let me introduce myself first, Gloria, responsible for serving as the think tank around the Emperor. What you see now is just the manifestation of my spiritual power. Even if you chopped this body into pieces, you can't hurt me at all, she said. 5 seconds. This was Mingfei's response. The Emperor thinks you have taken control of this body. He now recognizes your power. Perhaps we can cooperate. The sword flashed like silver lightning, a splash of bright red blood splashed, and the driver possessed by Gloria rolled to the ground. I don't need the recognition of heretics. And I never remember knowing you heretics, Mingfei said indifferently, putting away the blade of Jingyu. The executive commissioners were shocked. They couldn't even see Lumenfei's sword action clearly. And Angus just raised his eyebrows and said nothing. But the golden light in the eyes of the rolling head did not dissipate. In the dark night, it was like two small flashlights. I've said it before, even if you kick the head of this body like a ball, it won't have any effect on me. But we did underestimate your changes and power. Who is in your body now? The head was still talking, but Gloria's voice became low and gloomy, as if on guard against Lumenfei. The next second, the silver-white blade pierced through the mouth of the head. Then you need to remember, from now on, the one who will personally deprive you and your disrespectful heretic who calls himself the emperor of your life is. Lumenfei stepped forward, grasped the hilt of Jinyu's sword, and said in a deep voice, Anastates warrior, the champion warrior of the Lamenters, the Emperor's angel of death, the Emperor's blessed warrior, the son of St. Gervais, the protector of mankind, the slayer of the swarm, the executioner of chaos traitors, the heroic sole successor of Cortos Harkins, Lumenfei. After speaking, he swung a sword and cut the head in half. The eyes shining with golden light blinked at Lumenfei twice, and then gradually faded, and Gloria's spiritual power seemed to disappear. What kind of spiritual power is this? Lumenfei turned his head and asked Ram. This kind of world spirit is not recorded in the world spirit periodic table. Angus shook his head. Take these heads back to the academy and check if there are any special powers left. The executive officers looked a little strange, not because they had to clean up the remains or were shocked by the enemy's unknown world spirit abilities, but because they were in awe of the long list of S-level titles. Although most of them didn't understand what it meant, it still sounded quite loud. Your famous titles, maybe you can act one more Dragon Slayer of Castle. Angus smiled and made a suggestion. The title of Unfinished Deeds is just for reputation. Lumenfei shook his head. I haven't even seen a real alien yet. Well, then. And shrugged. Hilbert G. Nange's favorite student is obviously not the style of your title. Norma, oh no, the one who takes over here now is Eva, another personality of the academy system. Groya, Striker armored vehicles, freezer trucks, she is now searching for any clues they left in this world. Eva, I remember she is Fingal's partner. Lumenfei silently recited the name in his heart and spoke. Yes, the survivor of the Greenland Shadow, and finally, became the Academy's war personality Eva. Ange sighed faintly. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the CC-1000 Express specially prepared for Principal Ange and S-level students was passing through the dark pine forest and speeding towards the Academy. I checked before getting on the bus, and there is a micro-signal transmitter in this bag. Ange raised the file back in his hand. Was it done by those guys who want to become aliens? Lumenfei's expression turned cold. Although I don't have a good relationship with Henkel, he would not use such a dirty jewel to kill me if he wanted to. Besides, he is still the actual ruler of the family. No matter how much trouble the kids below make, they dare not mess with me. Ange shook his head. That's the heretics. Let's see what information old Henkel has prepared for us first. Don't let it be the photos of the most popular strips this quarter. Ange smiled and opened the file bag, pulling out a folder with several photos. Just a simple glance at the first page, the smile on his face became even bigger. Very good, it's not a photo of a stripper, it's real information. He pulled out the first page of paper and handed it to Lumenfei, and then Lumenfei found a word that sounded familiar. Groya. Groya, nicknamed Manipulator, Spokesperson, and Immortal. The attached photo is a white woman with short blonde hair, about 25 or 26 years old, with an indifferent look. She is engaged in underground arms and alchemical item trading, with activities all over the world, and has left relevant traces in many mixed-race dark networks. The nickname Immortal comes from a live transaction. A local buyer from Brazil intended to rob the gang and ambushed Gloria, who was personally hosting the transaction, and shot her. But the next day, a new Gloria appeared. She brought a large number of elite armed teams and slaughtered the Brazilian buyer, his gang and all affiliated gangs. Manipulator comes from Gloria's suspected ability to control spiritual words. She has appeared in many places in the world at the same time in the image of different identities, ages and races. The file provides information on humans who have been controlled or possessed by her. Most of them are local residents of different identities. The reasons and methods of control are unknown, but those humans who have been controlled by her will eventually die of cerebral hemorrhage. Heretics who play with human lives. Lumenfei's face was cold, and he had already sentenced this gang of heretics to death in his heart. At least we now know that Gloria is working for the Emperor, she admitted it herself. In addition, the spiritual world spirit is also a breakthrough point in the investigation. Angus withdrew his gaze from the information on the desk, raised his head and asked softly, Mingfei, are you interested in going to Japan? Chapter 67 Warrior Reason. Mingfei looked directly at Ange Groyer and put the last page of information in his hand in front of Mingfei. The information given by Hinkle says that she went to Japan in 2003. During that time, due to the accident in Greenland, the staff of the executive department suffered serious losses and were unable to take care of too many things. This includes the relaxation of control over the Japanese branch. Since she is serving the emperor, I have reason to suspect that she was secretly planning something in Japan during the period when the college executive department was recovering. Of course, all this needs to be verified with the Japanese branch. Then I'll wait for you to verify and confirm it clearly. I don't want to waste time running over. My club still has only 3 people. When mentioning his own club, Mingfei's tone was a little depressed. Why is no one willing to join his club? The only one who took the initiative to join was Finger, who wanted revenge. He did like Caesar Gattuso's appearance and temperament, but the other party was busy expanding his influence in the student union's club to compete for the president, and he probably wouldn't come to him. Ange remained silent. He couldn't tell you in person that the name of your club Lamenting Angel was too fancy, although the paintings in the Black Moon Hall were quite artistic. I will allow you to post the video of you splitting the armored vehicle on the forum as a recruitment advertisement for your club. Ange said. Will this help recruit new members? Mingfei was a little skeptical. Maybe it will be a good thing. Someone will always stand up and wave the black sail flag, and be the first to set foot on the land of Troy, even if according to the oracle he will die. Ange suddenly recited a prophecy from the ancient Greek epic Iliad. My life is not decided by the false god. Mingfei was dismissive of the prophecy. I'm just quoting a famous saying. Ange smiled helplessly, but you should still be prepared to go to Japan. I have a hunch that there will be something incredible waiting for you there. Alien? Then I would like to see it. Mingfei's eyes lit up. Invincible. The strongest person in Castle College was born today. At 5:30 inches the morning, a red eye-catching post was posted on the top of the Night Watchman forum. The poster's ID was Night Watchman. The vice president personally posted a post, which should have attracted attention. However, the title was too dazzling, and many students who had been surfing the forum until now did not even notice the poster when they clicked in. But then, the video attached to the post made them stare. The total length of the video was 26 seconds. 1 minute after the post was sent, the reply floor was flooded with crazy question marks. One sword splits the armored vehicle, is it so exaggerated? There are masters in the college. Who can calculate how much force is needed to split the armored vehicle head-on, and how much force should be applied to make the remaining power of the armored vehicle split to the side instead of knocking people away? The students who saw this post hurriedly woke up their sleeping roommates, and then the roommates notified the brothers and bosses of the club. Soon, the whole Castle College was completely boiling. The kids are under a lot of pressure now. When they wake up, they find a monster on equal footing with them. The bell tower of the chapel was still shrouded in darkness. The vice president was lying in front of the computer screen, laughing loudly, grabbing the bottle of single malt whiskey next to him and pouring it into his mouth. This was a shabby attic. There was only an unmade bed, a single sofa, a computer desk and a swivel chair, and a large bookshelf full of Western DVDs. Empty bottles and adult magazines were thrown everywhere. The sunny side was full of glass windows, which could provide good lighting, if it wasn't covered with huge posters of low-cut girls. This garbage dump didn't look like the place where Nicholas Flamel, the vice president of Castle College and the world's top alchemist, lived. And our monster is still worried about the lack of fresh blood in his club. Ange lay on the sofa. This was the cleanest and most comfortable place in the room. TSK, that alchemical weapon in his hand cost a lot of money, right? Yes, $60 million, counted on the account of the board of directors. Ange didn't care. Ahem. You are so generous, spending $60 million to buy a toy for your beloved student. If Old Frost knows, he will complain about you again. The vice president almost spit out the whiskey in his mouth. So I brought you a toy too. Angus threw a mahogany box over, and the vice president caught it and opened it. His eyes lit up. Alchemy field construction book. Interesting, or a lightweight functional field. Why, you bought this so that I can make your folding knife lighter. The vice president smiled. He was indeed a master in this regard, and he recognized the dragon characters on the sheepskin ancient book at the first sight. Mingfei seems to be working with the psychopaths in the equipment department to manufacture Gundam. See if you can use it on that thing. Angus said. Damn it, I was wondering why you suddenly got this thing for me to study. Why do you want to drag me into the water when you pamper your illegitimate child? The vice president muttered. He is a natural warrior. I will do my best to support him with everything he needs, weapons, manpower, money, but these expenses will eventually be paid by the school board. The vice principal reminded. Hasn't it always been like this? They pay the money and I'm responsible for my life. Angus grinned and said, get me a drink, thank you. There are no cups, only bottles. The vice principal fumbled under the table for a while, took out an unopened bottle of single malt whiskey and threw it over. The old slut pulled out the cork, tilted his head back and drank half of it before exhaling a breath of alcohol happily, and continued. They are all politicians. Politicians always think about building a new world before the war is over, just like the United States and the former Soviet Union had considered how to divide spheres of influence in Europe before they conquered Berlin. It's the same with Henkel. Yesterday, a kid said in front of Mingfei and me, let's become the new Dragon Clan. His head immediately separated from his neck. It's cruel, I like it. But Henkel didn't cause you trouble? That's really troublesome. The vice principal admired sincerely. Probably not yet, not sure if there will be in the future. And shook his head. Recently I want Mingfei to go to Japan. Go to Japan? That would be something interesting to watch. Is there anyone responsible for the live broadcast? I've long disliked those guys in the Japanese branch. The vice president became excited and interested. Chapter 68 Enlightenment. If you want to go, I can arrange for you to go with him. Ange said calmly. I don't care. Anyway, I don't care what the school board sees on my expense account. The vice principal laughed. You should stay here and I'll have someone send you some Japanese aid later. Ange shook his head helplessly. His old bat friend was always so frivolous. Even if the Dragon King was in front of him, he would laugh and drink a sip of whiskey and spray it on the Dragon King's face. No, that stuff is too light, I can't get used to it. The old cowboy muttered, and took another sip of whiskey. If it was someone else, I would still wonder if your student in Japan would give you face and not drive him crazy. Hehe, but if it were that little monster, I just want to bring a few bottles of wine to watch the show. I'm not asking Mingfei to crack down on the Japanese branch, the key is to track down the Emperor Gloria. During the period when the Academy was seriously injured, a hybrid with a high-risk psychic world spirit suspected to be the mastermind ran to Japan for nearly a year. It's hard not to associate something with it. If you want to say that the Greenland incident is related to the Japanese branch, that's a very serious accusation, Ange. The vice president's always sloppy look became serious and solemn at this time. Such words are equivalent to the fuse of war. No one wants a fierce internal fight to break out among the hybrids when the dragon race is about to fully recover. I'm just assuming. Ange said softly, drinking the whiskey in his hand. Welcome back, Captain. When Mingfei woke up, the first thing he saw was Finger holding a banner with a smirk on his face. It was almost 4 o'clock in the morning when he returned to the Black Moon Pavilion. After saying morning prayers, Mingfei rested and got some sleep until 10 o'clock in the morning. You didn't attend the banquet, so I didn't pack lobster for you. Mingfei sat up from the bed. Lobsters are not important now, Captain. You are now a super celebrity in Castle. Finger looked excited. Mingfei was startled, and then he understood what was going on. He perked up a little. Then has anyone applied to join the battle group? No. No. Mingfei couldn't believe his ears. Although you look really handsome when you split the armor vehicle with one sword, now most of the semester has passed, how can there be freshmen who are not yet in the club? Finkel said, we can only wait until the next school year to start with new talents, Captain. Well, we will also accept those who quit the club. Our family has a weak foundation, and the people from the two big factions of the Student Union and the Linhard Club don't think much of us. People from hobby departments such as the skiing and rowing departments have also lost interest when they heard that faith is forced here and there is high-intensity physical training. It's not forced now. Mingfei was a little depressed. He decided to first build a powerful battle group composed of elite warriors, and then slowly instill the Emperor's grand beliefs into them, so that they can truly fight for the Emperor. By the way, where is Shuzahan? Mingfei asked. He is sorting out the invitations from other clubs. Now the Student Union, and Heart Club, almost all clubs are inviting you to become their honorary member. Especially the Kendo Club. Their director wants to pack up the entire club and put it under our weeping angels. However, the honorary founder of the Kendo Club is the old bitch, the principal, so he can't make the decision. So I had to give in and invite you to become their honorary vice director. When you have time, teach them Kendo. Finkel seemed to have opened a box of chatterboxes and talked non-stop. Okay, let's talk about this later. Mingfei interrupted Finkel. There is news about the heretic emperor. Finkel's expression suddenly changed. The smile on his face quickly disappeared and became gloomy, as if there was a terrifying thunder lurking under the rolling dark clouds. He instantly changed from a heartless funny character to a ruthless avenger. Groya, a heretic who claimed to be his think tank, stayed in Japan for a long time after the Greenland accident. The specific information was further searched by the artificial system called EVA in the early morning. You can go and ask if there are any detailed results. Mingfei got out of bed and tidied his clothes. Okay. Finger replied in a deep voice, threw down the banner in his hand and turned to leave. Mingfei suddenly felt a little uncomfortable with his bitter and vengeful look. It seems that you will have to enlighten him in the future. This emotion is not suitable for believing in the Emperor. Not long after, Shuzaham knocked on Mingfei's door with a stack of neatly arranged letter papers. I'm glad you're okay. Here are the 31 invitations from various clubs, 7 challenge letters, and 17 love letters I have received so far. Put it aside for now. It's not the time to deal with this. Mingfei shook his head and closed the computer. Are there any special circumstances? Shuzaham asked. Yes, and they are those damn fallen heretics. Until now we haven't encountered any real dragon aliens, but these fallen heretics are emerging endlessly. Mingfei said coldly, although this alien bloodliner has brought powerful power to humans, there is also a great possibility of falling into heresy, especially those who have a high proportion of alien bloodliner in their bodies. So, we have to purify them before they fall. Shuzaham thought for a while, then spoke. No, under the premise of not harming humans, there are some people who can be cultivated. Mingfei's tone softened a lot. Just like us, the alien bloodliner is only used as power and tools, and can never be controlled to pollute our pure and pious souls. Shuzaham nodded. I understand. Teach them to believe in the Emperor, and use their own strength to fight for the Emperor and mankind. That's right. That's right, and now there are only 3 people in our regiment, and we need more fighting brothers. Mingfei looked excited. And they must not be controlled by any force. I don't trust any mixed blood forces, including the secret party behind Castle Academy. It is not ruled out that they have the possibility of corrupting themselves and wanting to become new aliens to rule the world after the Dragon Clan is over. Indeed. Caesar once despised me, saying that the Cachuso family is the underground ruler of Italy, and often interferes in his affairs every day through the relationship of the board of directors. The entire family looks arrogant from top to bottom. There is a great possibility that they will corrupt except Caesar. Shuzaham said. Then let them provide more financial assistance to us in purifying the heretic aliens before they fall. Also, we may have to go to Japan next. Chapter 69 Treat. Dear Student Mingfei, this is a notification text message. You'll go to Japan as an exchange student of Castle College for a 3-week exchange study. Please be ready before 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. You'll take the CC-1000 Express to Chicago Airport. During the exchange study, your courses will be graded by the Japanese branch. I wish you a happy exchange trip. The message was quickly transmitted to Mingfei's mobile phone. Shuzaham and Finger also received the text message with him. This was Mingfei's request. Originally, he was the only one who had the quota for this trip to Japan. But it was a rare opportunity to fight in actual combat. Mingfei let 2 combat brothers of his regiment go into battle, especially Shuzaham, who needed a place to freely practice using the world spirit. Jundian. Captain, the car is ready. Finger shouted loudly outside the Black Moon Pavilion. He changed from a ruthless avenger back to a laughing loser. The snow on the green Bermuda lawn melted quietly, and the dew dripping between the grass reflected the rising blood-red sun outside the Black Moon Pavilion. Mingfei and Shuzaham had very few things, except for a few symbolic changes of underwear and daily necessities, weapons. As they were all researching the model armor, the equipment department's production of explosive bombs was reduced a lot, with only about 300 rounds of metal storm explosive bombs. Although it was a little less, it was better than nothing. Mingfei cleared them all in one breath, just hoping not to use them too quickly. He carried that Jinyu greatsword wrapped in red silk on his back and a box with a chainsaw sword in his hand, ready to transform into a pure holy melee warrior. Shuzaham had the alchemical weapon near his aim, so he didn't need another melee weapon, so he took a bolt pistol. As for Finger, he had been in castle for so many years and he didn't have any personal weapons except pork elbows. In addition to the chainsaw sword, Mingfei also equipped him with a bursting rifle, the experimental version of what Alheim, which could be turned into a super meat grinder with the metal storm explosive bomb. Although I have heard about the special features of the Japanese branch, but I feel that you are more like going to be terrorists. Caesar Gattuso heard that all the members of the Weeping Angels Club were going on a mission, so he drove his Bugatti Veyron to watch and see them off early in the morning. We are going to be exchange students, Mingfei said, and carried the suitcase containing the grenade launcher and bombs into the trunk of the car. This reason is very far-fetched. I believe that you and Shuzaham are exchange students, but Finger, the nobleman, smiled as bright as the sun, and then sighed. What a pity. If the student union was not busy, I would also like to go with you to have fun. Maybe there will be a chance next time. Mingfei smiled and waved goodbye to him, and sat in the back seat of the Mercedes-Benz. Shuzaham simply nodded to his rival, who seemed like an enemy and a friend, without showing too much emotion. The Mercedes-Benz, painted with bright red blood drops and marks, drove out of the peaceful and tranquil campus in the morning glow that had just fallen. What awaited them next would undoubtedly be a bloody storm. And it was 10:20 p.m. Tokyo time. The beautiful and magnificent black crystal-like buildings reflected the colorful prosperity of Tokyo, and the giant neon sign shone brightly in the night sky. Tamamon Club. Tamamon is the name of the nine-tailed fox in mythology. She was a beauty who brought chaos to the world. She was born in India. She went to China and transformed into Dahi to seduce King Zhao. She was hunted down by Jiang Ziya. After escaping to Japan, she was favored by Emperor Toba and was given the name Tamamon. In the end, the Yin-Yang masters Abe Yasusaika and Abe Haramaka killed her in Nasuno. In Tokyo, the Tamamon Club is a luxurious place for entertainment to death. Every man who comes here seems to have become the seduced King Zhao, and is intoxicated by the warmth and softness of countless girls. But today, it rarely suspended business, but the door was neatly parked with black bridge cars. In the lobby on the first floor, the dazzling lights of camouflage and crystal glass on the ground formed the luxurious colors in the vast space. The vermilion wooden staircases circled along the four walls. Anyone who stepped into Tamamon for the first time would have an unreal feeling, as if he was flying in the sunset. But the beautiful dancers who were supposed to be dancing disappeared, and were replaced by old people with solemn faces and black feathers. They sat around the U-shaped low table in the hall without saying a word, and there was a bottle of sake in front of them. The old man sitting at the end of the low table was wearing a dark blue kimono, holding a damn king folding fan and shaking it lightly, his sword eyebrows flying, his expression calm. After about 3 minutes of silence, no one in the hall made a sound, and it was as solemn as a silent funeral. The old man looked around, closed the damn king folding fan in his hand, and the jade fan bone touched the low table, making a crisp sound. The Snake 8 clan. The old man spoke word by word. Tachibana. Genre. Uzuchi. Ryoma. Sakurai. Miyamoto. Yuma. Inoyama. After such an opening speech, the hall was still silent. Everyone present naturally could not be unfamiliar with these famous surnames spoken by the old man. The Snake 8 clan. The king of the Japanese underground, the largest gang organization in Japan, and also the organization of Japanese mixed bloods. It has been 61 years since Hilbert Jinanj landed on Japanese soil in 1946 and discussed the establishment of the Japanese part of the secret party with the Snake 8 clan. 61 years ago, he came to Japan alone, tore off the last fig leaf of the defeated Japan with sticks and knives, and defeated the Snake 8 clan with absolute violence. From then on, the Japanese branch was established. In the eyes of international mixed bloods, there is no so-called Snake 8 clan in Japan, only the Japanese branch. The Japanese branch of Castle Academy. After speaking, the old man poured himself a glass of sake. There were some unusual movements in the hall. Some people sighed softly, some looked sad, and some clenched their fists unwillingly. But no one lost control and cursed. Most people poured themselves sake and toasted the old man from afar. 61 years have passed. The Snake 8 clan is no longer the Snake 8 clan of the past, but in the eyes of the European secret parties, the Snake 8 clan is still the half-blood organization of the defeated country that cannot be on the stage. A 16-year-old child will come to Japan soon, arranged by the man himself. He may explore the secrets of the main family, or he may make a fuss in the main family for unfounded things. But he may also represent the accountability of the European secret party, or even a sharp sword sent by Yan himself to us who were expanding our autonomous power. Gentlemen, how do you think we should treat him? The old man asked. Behead him. Someone was venting his anger. Break him. Just like treating other little brats in the main department. Someone was indignant. The hall was suddenly filled with fierce debate. Some people think that this should be used to give the secret party a warning, while others think that they should be treated with courtesy, paralyzing the secret party so that they can divert their attention and concentrate on the development of the main family. What the head of the family means is, treat. The old man drank the third cup of sake and spoke in a low voice, instantly suppressing the noisy arguments on the low table. Treat him with the highest etiquette and put him under house arrest here until the exchange time is over. And as the head of the Warhammer family and the former head of the Japanese branch, I received the man's death on the day when the Japanese branch was established in the cold winter of 1946. There is no doubt that the Warhammer family will be fully responsible for this matter. P.S. I recommend the Dragon Clan fanfiction Dragon Clan, Restarting the New World, written by a good friend who has been with me all the way. It has a Jiangnan style and a very rare Luno CP. All fighting brothers, please support it. Chapter 70 S-level mission. A black giant monster lay across the Chicago airport, like a tamed dragon, waiting for its master to arrive. The principal actually used his private plane Sleipnir to pick us up. I dare say there is no one in the academy who is more impressive than us. Finkel sighed, took out his mobile phone to take pictures, and then operated it. A new post appeared on the Night Watcher forum. As one of the current celebrities in Castle Academy, Finkel's post will definitely not need to be constantly pushed up to avoid sinking like others. In less than 2 minutes, his post had dozens of replies, some envious, some amazed, and some mourning because everyone knows that the Japanese branch is not a good place. There were also curses after Mingfei's strength was revealed. Many gamblers who lost all their money in the 3-year exam agreed that the bad file was used by Finkel to deceive people, so they issued a castle debt collection order and blocked Finkel everywhere to demand repayment. The principal's private plane. Made by the equipment department. Mingfei stared at the plane with obvious traces of the equipment department's style, his eyes shining. Gulfstream G550, the leading brand among private jets, is designed for businessmen, superstars or politicians worth billions. This private jet only takes a few hours to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. It was still dark in New York when boarding, and it was already early morning in Paris when opening eyes. How is it possible? The equipment department is only responsible for making various perverted modifications to this Gulfstream G550 that was bought back. Fortunately, because it is the principal's private plane, they did not install any backup hidden energy on it, otherwise it could still be driven to, cough cough. Finkel coughed a few times and did not continue. Mingfei felt a little regretful. If the equipment department could make a plane, he could try to let them make a simple version of Storm Raven for him, a main transport and fire support air vehicle used by our natives. The boarding stairs were lowered, and a female specialist wearing the standard black windbreaker of the executive department was waiting for them. Student Mingfei. The female specialist carefully looked at Mingfei and the long sword he carried, her eyes filled with awe. The reputation of the S-level freshman had long spread throughout the executive department. He was the protagonist of the war practice class and won the MVP. In a sudden attack, he slashed an armored vehicle in front of many specialists with a sword and was unscathed. Is there anything? Mingfei asked. Yes, this is the document the principal asked you to give it. The female specialist politely handed over a grey-brown paper bag with both hands. The principal said please open it after you get on the plane. Mingfei took the paper bag, and the female specialist handed over an agreement. This is the body repatriation agreement. Please go to the Japanese branch to execute it this time. All the exchange students who are studying here sign here. I never sign this thing. Mingfei ignored the agreement and walked up the stairs to the boarding gate. I don't need it either. Shuzaham shook his head and followed Mingfei. Since the captain and the deputy captain are so confident, I won't sign it either. Anyway, the two in front will take over if something happens. Finger laughed and refused to sign the body repatriation agreement. He quickly followed the team with 2 heavy suitcases. The female commissioner looked helpless, but she didn't chase them and force them to sign. It seemed that she had expected this result. The interior of Slayton was decorated with high-end luxury, like a small living room in a villa, and even equipped with a wine cabinet and refrigerator, all fixed in place, including various fine wines and high-heeled glasses in the wine cabinet. Boom! The sleeping black monster woke up and let out a deafening roar, enough to tear a person's eardrum. In a normal Gulfstream special flight, the passengers in the plane can't even notice that the engine is running. The designer said it was as quiet as a huge blue whale swimming in the deep sea. But the principal Slayton is a modified version of the equipment department. Mingfei and Shuzhang are not unfamiliar with this name. Just like the pragmatism first character of those crazy people, the speed of this Gulfstream was pulled to the extreme. It is expected to take only 6 hours to cross the Pacific Ocean to Tokyo, which is more than 4 hours faster than the normal flight. But along with the extreme speed, there is also a roaring roar all the time. The Gulfstream G550 has changed from a blue whale swimming in the deep sea to a tiger shark launching a full-speed attack on food on the sea surface. There is no noise reduction measure, which is very suitable for those war blacksmiths who never consider comfort. Have you seen tanks equipped with zoned air conditioning, heated cushions and massage seats? Director Akagila said confidently. Mingfei opened the brown paper bag given to him by the executive department and pulled out the documents inside. The first thing that caught his eye was the eye-catching S-level red seal. Oh my god, S-level mission. It must be for you. I won't read it. I will be brainwashed if I read it. Finkel, who was sitting next to him, covered his eyes and turned his head away. Mingfei frowned slightly. Angus didn't tell him that there was any S-level mission. The 3 of them knew that this trip to Japan as an exchange student was a complete cover-up, and Angus also knew what Mingfei was sent to Japan for. So he specially sent his beloved Slayton, consuming hundreds of tons of aviation fuel to send 3 weeping angels weighing nearly 300 kilograms in total and their weapons and equipment to Japan. The Emperor and his think tank Grow did leave definite and profound traces in Japan. Mingfei ignored the seal that said this secret is for Mingfei to read only and briefly glanced at the mission information recorded on the document in his seat. The last page of the document contained a stern warning that no information about the mission should be leaked to others, otherwise it would violate some treaty and receive some punishment, and the words were filled with the smell of steel and blood. Shuzhang, who was sitting on the other side, looked away unconsciously and said softly, "This should be a task assigned by the school board." This inhumane tone of ignoring the process and the safety of the executors and only focusing on the results is in line with their style. Mingfei said nothing and poured out the remaining things in the brown paper bag, a dark red card with a sandalwood scent and a box of matches. Matches are used to burn documents after reading, and the card has the words written on it. This task has nothing to do with me, Angus. Mingfei took out the match and lit the card. The smell of smoke and sandalwood mixed together and it was a bit strange. After the card was burned out, he stuffed the documents and matches back into the brown paper bag, raised his hand and threw them, accurately thrown into the trash can fixed at the foot of the table not far away. Fuck. Captain, you were definitely the most audacious and cruel student I have ever seen since I entered school. You just throw away the S-level mission directly from the school board. Finkel's eyes were as big as copper bells, staring at the brown paper bag thrown into the trash can. Let them find professional teams to steal things and act as spies. We are not their tools to clear obstacles to consolidating centralization. We are only responsible for finding heretics and purifying them. Mingfei said calmly. Chapter 71. The Useless Man with Facial Paralysis and the Killer, 4K. Slayton's roar tore apart the sea like clouds below. Mingfei sat on the sofa and looked up at the brilliant and pure Milky Way outside the skylight. His thoughts were flying. Captain, what is your impression of the underworld gang? Finkel's words did not bring Mingfei back to reality, but instead dived into deeper memories. Gang or sect? Mingfei recalled a combat servant in the past regiment. Although he failed to become an Astartes, he was also a brave and loyal warrior. His strong sense of self-reliance and brave fighting skills were honed from a hive gang on a certain planet. The hive is a unique building of the human empire. It is not divided into residential, industrial and agricultural areas like the city at home. It is a huge urban factory complex, with layers of buildings made of quick concrete and adamantium piled up, and thousands of residential and industrial blocks colluding with each other. Then, tens and hundreds of years later, thousands of new communities were built on the old communities. One dome after another formed a huge artificial mounting, the top part of which could often extend to the sky thousands of meters high. Tens or even hundreds of billions of people lived in such supergiant cities, isolated from the dangerous wasteland with severe pollution in the outside world. The closed environment of the hive itself naturally made it impossible for everyone to be law-abiding citizens. The middle and lower levels of the hive were filled with various violent gangs, criminals, mutants and psychics who were hiding from the planetary government. At the bottom, there were even human heretical organizations that were polluted by the evil Zerg aliens, gene stealers, or degenerate heretical sects that believed in evil gods. It was a super melee. The combat servant survived in such an environment. At the same time, such people were not only excellent sources of soldiers for the Star Army, the mainstay of mankind, but also the source of new recruits for the Arstitives. Not a good impression. Then you must control your emotions when you arrive in Japan. The Japanese branch is a pure mafia organization, and it is also the oldest mafia family in Japan, also known as the Snapekiate families. Finger held a laptop and introduced it to Mingfei and Shuzahan. His role in this trip to Japan was to provide information assistance, commonly known as reporting points, and most of the fighting and killing was left to the head and deputy head. Does the Snapekiate families have internal fighting? Mingfei thought of the Gams in Kaido who fought each other to the death and wasted their lives, and asked. No, they are not only very united, but also very restrained, and will not resort to force unless necessary. And when there is an earthquake or flood in the Japanese people, the first wave of rescue is often not the army and police, but the mafia. Mingfei nodded, and his impression of the Snapekiate families was greatly improved, compared with those gangs in Kaido. But the Japanese branch likes to abuse the specialists from the headquarters. I looked through the Night Watch forum and found travel notes posted by specialists who had been on business trips to Japan before. Everyone thinks that the Japanese branch is a hellish place, where they are abused in every way and have no dignity as human beings. When they come back, they seem to have obsessive-compulsive disorder. They bow to everyone they see and immediately shout "I'm wrong" in panic when criticized. They are very neurotic. Finkel said. Will we be like this too? Shuzaham frowned. This sounded like a place dedicated to sharpening and demoralizing. It shouldn't be. The Japanese branch adheres to the culture of the strong. Only the strongest of the strong will be respected. Finkel glanced at Mingfei, as if to say, I don't need to explain it clearly, right? Shuzaham was relieved and nodded. Sleipnir trembled, and the altitude was gradually decreasing. The rain dragged straight watermarks on the porthole. The bright flame tail talked through the clouds, and a huge city with bustling lights appeared under the wing. The highways that extended in all directions formed a glowing giant net. At the end of the giant net, the dark yellow streetlights extended in all directions like the veins of leaves, covering every corner of the city. Tokyo, the largest city in Asia, was their destination for this trip. Let's go over the plan again. Mingfei glanced at the beautiful city below the porthole and said softly. It was 10 o'clock in the evening in Tokyo time. Tokyo Hinda Airport, an important international airport in Tokyo's business circle, is located on the left bank of the Tama River estuary at the southeast end of Ota City. It is the largest airport in Japan. The head of the Inuyama family of the Snape 8 families looked up and saw the black beast that broke through the sea of clouds and approached Hinda Airport in the distance. Sleipnir, that man's exclusive car. Let those children ride in his car, is it telling us that they are following his will? The head of the Inuyama family laughed softly. Black high-end bridge cars lined up on both sides of the aisle. Men in black suits wore sunglasses and looked solemn, waiting in line for the arrival of the guests on the Black Beast. Even if we look at the history of the 8 Snape families, such a grand welcome ceremony, even for welcoming the powerful people at the secret party, isn't it? Yoshitaka. He said softly, and the thunderous roar of Sleipnir gradually rang in his ears. Yes, this is the most grand welcome ceremony in the history of our family. In the past, the headquarters commissioners who came to our family for inspections all took their own cars to report to our family. How can they be worthy at being personally welcomed by our family members? Behind the head of the Inuyama family, the old man in a black suit also responded quickly. What's more, we are welcoming a child who might be sent by the man to demonstrate to the main family. The head of the Inuyama family had a faint smile on his face. Are you ready to entertain the guests? Ready, head of the family. Hasiko Yoshitaka replied, Tamamon no Mi chefs are ready. When the guests arrive, they will serve a variety of Chinese and Japanese dishes, as well as a shabu-shabu hot pot to ward off the cold. The guests' rooms are also decorated in different styles according to their personal preferences. The girls have changed into their best clothes and will welcome our guests in the most beautiful manner. Where are my lovely daughters? They have already put on their makeup and are waiting for your instructions in the car. In front of the beautiful girls' blooming smiles, even the most determined man can't help but fall into the arms of tenderness, let alone an innocent child. The head of the Inuyama family smiled, "Turn on the lights and let Satsuko come over." Sleipnir has landed on the runway and began to taxi. Compared with other ordinary passenger planes that landed, Sleipnir, which had just finished supersonic flight, had to taxi a much longer distance. But it just stopped in front of the welcoming team of the Japanese branch. The bright incandescent light came on, and the angle of the light was just right, which would not dazzle the guests coming down the gangway, and they felt as if they were in the daytime. The Japanese branch is making such a big fuss. It doesn't matter, just follow the normal plan. Oh, I saw the beautiful girl holding flowers behind the old man. They are all welcoming you, Captain. Mingfei scanned all the people in the welcoming team, and at the same time sorted out the terrain information of this place. The people of the Inuyama family were also observing them, and quickly determined the identities of the 3 exchange students. Kadian had already sorted out their relevant documents and information. The tall, iron-gray-haired, grinning German man walking in front is Fingal von Frinz, the most famous loser student at Castle Academy, who has been held back for nearly 4 years. Not long ago, his bloodline rating was reduced to an unprecedented F level, and his words are unknown. As soon as they saw this person's information, the Inuyama family's top leaders knew that this so-called exchange student was not as simple as it seemed, because who would send losers as exchange students? The serious, black-haired, handsome young man walking in the middle is Shuzahan, with a level bloodliner, who entered school with the S level. From junior high school to Castle Academy, he has always been a top student, with excellent grades in all subjects and outstanding in actual combat. His weapon is a Japanese longsword, and his words are unknown. The child walking at the end, Inuyama, wearing a black feather woven, looked up at the child with no trace of immaturity on his face, and squinted his eyes slightly. He keenly sensed the shocking murderous intent hidden under the calm surface from the other party. Although he looked like a child, he was like Kota Nobunaga who had come out of the underworld. He is not a good person, Inuyama thought. Mingfei, an S-level freshman who had been enrolled for less than half a year, was the most cherished student of Principal Anger's. Before enrolling in Castle, his resume was so bad that the old people laughed disdainfully when they saw the first few pages. However, when they saw the last few pages, the smiles on their faces disappeared and fell into silence. Especially when the man holding a gorgeous emerald sword split the armored vehicle that was rushing at full speed, their expressions became very solemn. Go, Shitsuko. Present the most beautiful smile and flowers to our distinguished guests. Inuyama said softly. The girl behind him with a fresh face and a high ponytail like a Kendo girl nodded, took the bright bouquet from the hood of the black Mercedes-Benz next to her, and trotted towards the gangway. Of course, Satsuko is not just any girl found on Red Street. She is the goddaughter of Inuyama and the principal of a famous Japanese ballet company. In addition to her, there is young Ai, the most promising girl in the Tokyo TV circle, and the young talented musician Kazusa. They are all top beauties supported by the head of the Inuyama family. They have access to top social circles and have all kinds of connections and resources, and they have countless fans and suitors. But tonight, they are only here to welcome the young guests who came from overseas. Welcome to Japan. Satsuko smiled, as if she was bathed in spring breeze. She presented the flowers in her hand to Mingfei as gracefully and calmly as a swan. Mingfei reached out to take it, returned a polite smile, and stepped back to avoid Satsuko's fragrant embrace. Shizuka was a little stunned. When she was about to withdraw her arms, Finger, who was carrying a suitcase and smiling frivolously, came over. It's okay. I'll accept your hug on behalf of the captain. Inuyama family, Inuyama. The Japanese branch welcomes Lu Jun. Inuyama smiled gently and extended his palm to Mingfei. His eyes glanced at the long sword wrapped in red velvet silk behind him without leaving a trace. You're welcome. Although the old man in front of him looked old, Mingfei could still feel the blood and strong power rushing through his body. A powerful hybrid. It's better to meet in person than to hear about it. Lu Jun is really a great talent. Principal Angus cherishes you like a precious sword and it's not a whim. Inuyama smiled gently. On the other side, Finger, who was carrying a suitcase, also looked enthusiastic. He came up to Hasiko Yoshitaka, whose identity was obviously also extraordinary, and asked which car they were taking. Although he didn't really want to deal with this loser, out of upbringing and respect for the S-Class, Hasiko Yoshitaka politely informed them that they would take the Ingoyama family's Maybach to the Tomonomi Club for a midnight snack. Upon hearing that there was a midnight snack, Finger's eyes lit up and he kept saying that it was great. Then he opened the trunk of the black Maybach very familiarly and stuffed several heavy suitcases in. Shuzahan, wearing a Murazame on his waist, walked to the left side of the Maybach without saying a word and opened the back door. By the way, Ingoyama family, is there anyone among you who speaks Chinese better? Lu Mingfei suddenly asked. Mr. Lu, do you want a translator? Ingoyama he smiled, then you can ask Shitsuko, she speaks both English and Chinese very well. Okay. Lu Mingfei nodded, turned to smile at the beautiful Kendo girl who looked like Hiroju Ryoko. Sorry, I'm afraid I'll offend you later. Although Shitsuko didn't understand what the young S-Class guest meant by this sentence, before she could respond with a polite smile, the S-Class suddenly grabbed her hand and pulled her towards the Maybach. Shuzaham had already opened the back door for them. Children are children after all. It's easy for young boys to fall in love with beautiful girls at first sight. Even Oda Nobunaga would fall in love with Noheim. Ingoyama his mouth curled up. The young S-Class from the headquarters finally fell into the gentle place he carefully prepared. In this way, suddenly, the smile on Ingoyama's face froze. Shuzaham closed the door for the S-Class and Shitsuko who was sitting in the back seat, and then opened the driver's door. Then he lifted the confused driver out with one hand, and sat in the driver's seat. Boom, the Maybach engine made a loud roar, and turned into a swift black shadow and drove away in full view of everyone, leaving behind the Ingoyama family who were stunned and didn't understand what happened. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 72. Ruining the Scene. Barker. What are you all doing standing there? Why don't you catch up with them immediately? Hasiko Yoshitaka was the first to react from his astonishment, and he angrily yelled at the men in black suits lined up on both sides. The elites of the Ingoyama family were awakened from their dreams, and hurriedly turned around and got into the black Mercedes-Benz. When they started the car, the Maybach of the head of the Ingoyama family had already disappeared. The distinguished guests from overseas who were welcomed by them were having a friendly talk with the head of the Ingoyama family with a smile on their faces the previous second. The next second they drove away the head of the family's sports car in full view of everyone, and abducted the beautiful Miss Shizuko, and the smile on the head of the family even remained on his face. This was a road they had never imagined. The passengers at the Hinta airport terminal looked at the two black lines of cars in the distance in surprise. At first, the grand welcome there made them think that an ambassador from another country or a senior government official was visiting Japan. They actually dared to ignore and trample on the friendship shown by the Snake family to the headquarters. Even if they were S-level students sent by Angas, their attitude and behavior were too reckless. This is the Japanese branch, the territory of the Snake family. Not their lax and free academy. Hasiko Yoshitaka shouted in a deep voice, his expression filled with anger. The head of the Ingoyama family did not speak, the smile on his face had disappeared, and he stood there without saying a word. Half a minute later, Hasiko Yoshitaka's cell phone rang. Team leader. The head of the family's private car has lost signal. The panicked voice of the Ingoyama family lead rang in the phone. What? Hasiko Yoshitaka couldn't believe his ears. Not only the head of the family's private car, but also the signal of Miss Satsuko's tracker has disappeared. Hasiko Yoshitaka turned off his phone, secretly sizing up the expression of the head of the Ingoyama family, not daring to breathe. After a long while, Ingoyama's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a smile. I underestimated this S-level. They never thought of accepting the kindness of the Snake 8 clan from the beginning. In this case, let's show them the bloody storm under the calm lake of the Japanese branch. Notify the main family. Although he was smiling, Ingoyama's words were as cold as the dead of winter. Hasiko Yoshitaka shuddered coldly. Shitsuko lay in the boy's arms, feeling the heartbeat on the boy's chest behind her like a drum. She didn't dare to move. Two small swords that still carried her body temperature and fragrance were crossed on her snow-white neck. When she saw Shuzaham carrying the driver out, she felt something was wrong. especially after the other party started the owner's special car and left the Warhammer family's welcoming team far behind. She immediately realized these 3 exchange students from the main branch wanted to get out of the control of the main family. This is absolutely not allowed. But on the surface, Setsuko still looked like a well-behaved girl who didn't know why. But her palm was gradually moving towards the black and white school uniform skirt. Setsuko was very confident in her murderous intent hidden under her beautiful appearance, and the same was true in her swordsmanship. She didn't keep the ponytail like a kendo girl just to look good. She was more talented in kendo than ballet. She carried 2 small swords with her and was proficient in the small sword 2-sword style, which was most suitable for such a narrow place. When Setsuko's hand just reached into the skirt thinking that it was unnoticeable, the cold eyes of the S-class beside her had already swept over, as if warning her. But the arrow was on the string and had to be shot. The blade was unsheathed, and the cold light flashed. Setsuko took the initiative and wanted to control the young S-class beside her and ordered the 2 people in front to stop the car. But Mingfei didn't give her a chance to put the knife on. His strong palm was like a shackle and firmly imprisoned Setsuko's slender white wrist. Setsuko's pretty face changed slightly, and she wanted to hold the knife in her back hand to cut vertically to force the other party to let go. But the next second, she seemed to have become a puppet being controlled. Her arms were the control line, and she and the sword twisted together under Mingfei's control. When she came to her senses, she was already lying in Mingfei's arms, with the small swords in her hands crossed on her neck. This is the second warning, Miss Shizuko. Shizuko's body trembled softly, not because of the warm male breath beside her ear, but because of the cold murderous intent in Mingfei's words. We won't hurt you, but we also hope that you can cooperate with us as a translator. After the mission is over, you will return home safely. Mingfei said softly, and pushed the palm of his hand that was tightly holding Shizuko inward. Feeling the cold touch on her neck, she rubbed her head lightly in fear to express her agreement. Very good, I hope we can cooperate happily in the next period of time, Miss Shizuko. Mingfei loosened his palm, untied Shizuko's restraints, and took away the 2 small swords in her hands. The captain is right, Miss. It will be absolutely safe to cooperate with us. Finger turned his head from the co-pilot seat and smiled. Don't say useless words, Finger. Mingfei said coldly. No problem, Captain, I'm doing what you asked. Finger's fingers were clacking fast on the slightly heavy laptop on his knees, connecting to the Maybach car system. Okay. The positioning and tracking system on this car has been deleted, and the guys from the Japanese branch will never be able to track us in this life. Hearing this, Setsuko couldn't help but show a look of astonishment on her pretty face. Most of the vehicle safety systems of the main family were set up by the Miyamoto family, directly connected to the independent intelligent control system Kagear of the Japanese branch. This rough man in front of him actually deleted it in a few words. Noticing Setsuko's gaze, Finger gave himself a thumbs up with pride. And you, Miss Setsuko. Take off the tracker on you too. Mingfei said, his eyes covered with a light golden color. Setsuko's breathing suddenly became rapid and her face flushed. Under the gaze of those terrifying golden eyes, Mingfei's words were the master's orders that could not be disobeyed. She trembled and pulled her skirt up, revealing the sheath that was close to her snow-white thighs. The small sword used for sneak attacks was hidden in this position. Setsuko removed the sheath and took out a capsule-sized tracker from the inside. Mingfei reached out and took it, looked at it for a few times, then crushed it and threw it out of the window. You can start positioning, Finkel. Okay, Captain. Finkel moved his eyes away from Setsuko's snow-white thighs and turned his head to continue operating the computer on his thigh. The map screen data was transmitted to the car navigation system, which immediately pointed out a new route. Shusahan glanced at the map instructions on the GPS screen, turned the steering wheel, and the Maybach drew a graceful arc and drifted into the traffic of Tokyo's major business district. The first stop is Shibuya District, Tokyo, Xingmu nightclub. Finkel said. Nightclub. Shizuka was stunned. These 3 exchange students made such a big scene to get out of the control of the family. I thought they were going to do something big, but I didn't expect that the first stop was to go to a nightclub. What about the accuracy of the news? Mingfei asked. Eva has calculated it based on the threat connection algorithm, and the accuracy of the news is 92%. The behind-the-scenes boss of Xingmu nightclub, Kotaro Nakazori, is actually an underground black drug dealer responsible for selling unknown banned drugs on a small scale. 4 years ago, he was still a nobody, following the boss of the underworld to make a living, and suddenly he became famous overnight. And during this period of time, Gloria's footprints involved Speyer District. Finkel's expression was very rare and serious, and he told Lumenfei about Eva's threat connection algorithm. In this information network society, people's GPS navigation tracks, phone calls, bills, medical records, emails, are like a huge e-book. Eva uses the powerful simulation ability Natural Evolution to analyze various clues from this e-book. Of course, all this was done in the academy in advance, because such a huge calculation requires the whole system to work together. Finkel had sneaked out in the middle of the night to sort out the data many times, so Lumenfei temporarily exempted him from his morning jogging exercise. Your girlfriend just needs to calculate accurately, I'm only responsible for clearing the field and purifying. Lumenfei waved his hand, which was one of the reasons why he brought Finkel here. According to normal procedures, the Weeping Angels Society is not qualified to call Eva. But Finkel is different. Eva is his artificial system girlfriend, and there is no such thing as qualification or non-qualification. And even Lumenfei doesn't know how much of his own abilities this fighting brother has hidden. And Speyer is a district that is listed as a 24-hour sleepless street like Shinjuku. It is densely populated with famous department stores, fashion stores, restaurants, coffee shops, game facilities, and custom facilities. It is known as the fashion center of Asia. The Maybach, which had been running wildly for nearly half an hour, stopped in front of the Starry nightclub. Shuzahang and I will go in. Finger, you stay in the car and pay attention to the situation. Lumenfei put on the headset and assigned that task in a few words. In fact, the task is not complicated. Find Nate Kazoi Kotaro and ask for information about Gloria. If there are any aliens or heretics, purify them. Okay, no problem. Finger made an okay gesture. Ms. Setsuko, you have to act with us next. Lumenfei picked up the box containing the chainsaw sword, issued an invitation to Setsuko, and handed the 2 small swords back to her. Setsuko had no right to refuse, nor did she dare to run away. This S-level gave her the feeling of a monster. She took the knife and put it back into the sheath under her skirt, then followed Lumenfei out of the car. She was getting more and more confused about these exchange students. They came from the American Academy headquarters across the Pacific Ocean. The Warhammer family prepared a grand welcome banquet for them, but they ignored it. Then they turned around and ran to a nightclub in Speyer. It didn't look like they were here to drink, but more like they were here to mess things up. Chapter 73 Thighs. Especially after the rough and ferocious chainsaw sword appeared in front of her, Shijinshi was more convinced that Lumenfei and his gang came here to mess up the place. Moreover, Lumenfei just hung this conspicuous weapon on his waist, only slightly covered by a black windbreaker. The black-haired, cold-faced Shuzaham did the same, hanging the pistol that was surprisingly large in both caliber and shape on his waist, symmetrical with the katana. Shijinshi hesitated for a moment, then leaned over and removed the small katana and the scabbard from her thigh, and simply disassembled and tied them up to make a simple strap, carrying the 2 small katana on her back. This style at least makes the 2 of them not so outstanding. If it was a rich girl with 2 cold-faced bodyguards carrying dangerous weapons just now it is 3 cosplay enthusiasts who got off the Maybach. The elements of school uniform, double swords and kendo beautiful girl immediately attracted the attention of many pedestrians around, and even the 2 cold-faced bodyguards beside her became less scary. What? You mean the chainsaw and guns? They're just cosplay props. The 3 pushed open the door of the nightclub with a pink sign, and were greeted by melodious singing and warm air mixed with the smell of alcohol and perfume. The reception manager behind the door was still considering whether to conduct a proper inspection on them, but Shitsuko's sweet smile dispelled his doubts. Star Curtain Nightclub welcomes the 3 of you. Would you like something to drink? Lumenfei's eyes penetrated the colorful and warm lights, examining the people and objects in the nightclub. He didn't find any aliens, but he wasn't sure if there were any heretics. Shuzaham was paying attention to the expressions of Shitsuko and the reception manager at the door, in case she asked for help from others in some way and attracted people from the Japanese branch to disrupt their plans. I've hacked into the system of this nightclub. You guys go sit down somewhere first. I'll check if there's anything. Yo, there's a big-breasted bunny girl coming towards you at 4 o'clock. Don't talk nonsense, Finkel. Find someone right away. Lumenfei frowned. Indeed, a beautiful bunny girl holding a tray and wearing revealing clothes walked up to him with a twist of her foot, smiling charmingly and asking softly. Shitsuko hurried over to help him out and sent the bunny girl away. Let's find a place to sit down first. Usually, places like this are protected by gangsters who have received protection money, and they will rush over if something happens. And the main family is the largest gangster in Japan. Shitsuko came to Mingfei and reminded him softly. Thank you for the reminder. Mingfei nodded and took her and Shuzaham to a more remote booth in the booth area. The view of the stage from this position is very poor. You can't see the band singing on the stage or the dancers dancing with poles wrapped around them. But other than that, the booth area, bar area, main door, fire safety door of the nightclub are all within the field of vision of this booth, which is an excellent control point. 2 pairs of hawk-like eyes scanned everything here, and soon, Mingfei noticed something unusual. There was a man and a woman sitting in the corner of the bar area. The man had short dark blonde hair, a white long jacket lining, a silver necklace around his neck, and a smile on his face that was obviously malicious. The girl was too young, with a beautiful face with light makeup, sitting on the seat with her legs together and nervous, and even wearing a high school uniform, obviously different from the student uniform of Shitsuko's style. Obviously, the other party was still an underage high school student. But what really attracted Mingfei's attention was that the yellow-haired man took out a finger-thick test tube from his pocket, leaned over to block the girl's view, and dripped a few drops of dark red liquid into the wine glass. He actually dared to drug an underage child. The new version of the regulations of the main family has clear rules. Clubs around the school are prohibited from selling and using banned drugs to students, and members are even more prohibited from using banned drugs to commit illegal acts against underage students. He is ignoring the main family. Shitsuko's expression became indifferent. The rules of your underworld are quite regular. Even Shuzaham was surprised and made his own evaluation. The main family also needs order and stability. Most of the time, attacking students will implicate the entire family and attract the police, so the main family will avoid such troubles that far outweigh their benefits. Shitsuko whispered. She is the goddaughter of the head of the Inuyama family. In addition to ballet and kendo, she is most familiar with the rules of the main family. Then please trouble Miss Setsuko to invite him over. Also, I remember that the target is selling banned drugs, right, finger? Yes, that guy Nakazami Kotaro used to make a living from this. Hey, this nightclub actually has this kind of security system. Yoshi, watch me, I'll get you out in a minute. Setsuko nodded, stood up and walked out of the booth. No man can refuse the invitation of a fresh and sweet-looking Kendo JK girl. The yellow-haired man in the bar area had shining eyes and decisively abandoned the other young JK, nodded and bowed, and followed Setsuko happily. Setsuko casually poured out the glass of wine on the bar, and ignored the surprised young JK, and led the yellow-haired man back to the booth that seemed to be home to 2 man-eating beasts. After being in the underworld for a few years, he knew very well who could be provoked and who could not be provoked by the yellow-haired man. And the eyes of the 2 men in front of him, staring at him like a lion, were extremely intimidating. Obviously they belonged to the latter. He instinctively wanted to escape, but the Kendo JK tripped him, and the body that he thought was soft and weak pressed him tightly against the crystal glass table in the booth like a shackle. PK. Wanmao spoke rudely, but Shitsuko, who pressed him against the glass table, increased her strength, and he could only scream immediately. Shitsuko seemed to have merged into their group from the state of being kidnapped. Shuzaham stood up and took over the control of Wanmao from Shitsuko. As a good social pillar with a good family background, Shuzaham naturally would not show mercy to such a scum, and grabbed his head and smashed it hard against the glass table. Boom. A bloody crack appeared on the crystal glass table. Ms. Shitsuko, you will be responsible for translation from now on. Mingfei said, stood up and took Wanmao's bag, and poured out several finger-thick test tubes from it. The liquid medicine in the test tube showed a beautiful crystal red color, and tiny bubbles could be seen swimming in the liquid. What is this? Mingfei asked. Sugar, saccharin. The yellow-haired man was still stubborn, and Shuzaham grabbed his head and there was another muffled bang sound, and the crack on the table widened a little. I said. This is medicine. A banned drug that is not circulated on the market. The yellow-haired man shouted with blood all over his face. Kotaro Nakatomi, do you know him? You actually know the name of Mr. Nakatomi? Asshole. Since you know it, why don't you hurry up, bang. I was wrong. I said. Mr. Nakatomi is the owner of this nightclub, and these medicines were given to me by the big guys under him. I'm just a small bastard responsible for selling medicines. Let me go, I really don't know anything, the yellow-haired man cried bitterly, with blood, tears and snot mixed together. How to deal with him? Shu Zhang asked. According to the rules of our family, anyone who uses illegal drugs to commit illegal acts against minors must cut off 10 fingers to apologize. Shi Jinzi, who had been acting as an interpreter, suddenly spoke up. Then I'll leave it to you. Lu Mingfei nodded. This man was a scum who attempted to commit a crime and deserved to be punished. Shi Jinzi pulled out the washashi from the double swords behind her. The yellow-haired man widened his eyes in horror and wanted to yell for help, but Shu Zhang stuffed a bottle of champagne into his mouth. Lu Mingfei stood up and left the booth, not because he couldn't stand a bloody scene, but because Finger, who had remotely invaded, had made a new discovery. This nightclub hides something incredible. There is a secret room on the second floor underground, which should be their pharmacy. Fuck. Captain, you'd better take your weapons and go down to take a look. Finger screamed. Show the way. Lu Mingfei said. Shu Zhang immediately followed. Shi Jinzi shook off the blood on the blade, and seeing the two people who had already gone far away, a look of hesitation appeared on her pretty face. After a long while, she put away her sword and quickly followed Lu Mingfei and Shu Zhang. The young JK who was standing not far away and was completely stunned was also driven out by Shijiko. After witnessing the bloody scene of 10 fingers being cut off, she was afraid that she would never come to a place like a nightclub again in her life. In the commercial circle of Speyer district, where every inch of land is valuable, warehouses and wine cellars are generally arranged underground. But strangely, Lu Mingfei and his friends had a very smooth journey to the underground of Xingmu nightclub, and there was not even a security guard to block the road. Go straight for 20 meters, turn right and walk to the end. That wine cabinet is a cover. Wait, I will open the secret door for you. Finger guided them all the way to the end of the underground floor. After repeated reminders, the empty wine cabinet in front of Lu Mingfei and the dark wall behind it were removed, and a dark passage leading to the so-called underground second floor appeared. A chilly wind came from the bottom of the passage, carrying a strong smell of blood. Lu Mingfei took off the chainsaw sword from his waist, and his eyes were covered with a layer of golden mist. The prophetic psychic ability, foreboding, was fully activated. Once an enemy launched an attack, he would be the first to realize it. Walking down the slippery stairs, the dark environment did not have any effect on the two weeping angels. Shu Zhang even helped Shi Jinzi up like a gentleman. The other party had a chance to escape just now but still followed them. No matter what the purpose was, at least now he could give the other party a little more trust. Remind you, it's best to be mentally prepared. Finkel's faint voice came from the headset, like a rather redundant narration in a third-rate horror drama. In fact, there was no need to remind them, because they had already seen the automatic door at the end of the stairs that was stuck with a thumb and could not be closed normally. Chapter 74. Remarks on the release. Overdue updates. It will be on the shelves tomorrow. This new book by a new author cannot achieve such a success without the support of all the Fighting Brothers. The Holy Hall would like to thank all the Fighting Brothers here. According to common sense, there will be a burst of updates after it is put on the shelves, but as a hard-working community worker in the epidemic outbreak area, it is quite good to have the opportunity to type on the phone, but I will still strive for 3 updates tomorrow, with a quality of 3K per chapter, which is rounded up to 10,000 per day. Then, I would like to ask all the Fighting Brothers to subscribe to support it. Everyone should do their best to reward such things. Subscriptions are very motivated. Finally, I would like to report the death situation. First of all, the 5 chapters of the 4.5 leaders of the Benevolent Father bit dark, and then during the National Day, the epidemic was dragged to scan the code at the end of the month, so the total load is about 6 chapters, so a total of 11 chapters are owed. I will make up for it. Finally, I would like to thank many Fighting Brothers for giving a lot of rewards. I haven't been able to thank you all during this period. I will just post it here. Thanks to the book friend 200091581481461 for his 10,000 reward support. Thanks to Futichu for his 7,500 reward support. Thanks to Zijin for his 5,000 reward support. Thanks to Want to Drink Clear Porridge, book friend 202209820363396, book friend 20220523234644230 Zliakuagen, Why Drunk Beauty, book friend 2020120223431 4, 5, 7, 8. Book friend 2, 0, 2, 0, 1, 1, 1, 8, 1, 7, 4, 6, 1, 2, 1, 5, 7. Kizirni, Yatao Hong. Book friend 2, 0, 2, 1, 0, 4, 2, 5, 0, 7, 3, 3, 2, 5, 5, 0, 6. Zipoli. Book friend 1, 4, 0, 8, 1, 2, 2, 1, 4. Is green. Link Kongbin Jingzi. The tea fruit is hidden in the leaves. Shiling QAQ. Jiahao Shamjin. Liu. I am Tiger June. Ling Hai. Adolf 6V. The kebab that stays up late. Acelia Feng Stephen. Ching Shamran. Juluo. The moon on the mountain is green. Jill Lai Kong. Shinru Coconut Naturals Black and other loyal Astates for their rewards and support. I also thank more than 1,000 Astates Fighting Brothers for their monthly ticket support. Thank you very much. I will continue to write. Chapter 75 Snake Deadpool. Mingfei kicked and the thigh flew into the room behind the automatic door. It was obvious that the thigh had been cut off from the owner and existed as a separate object. The automatic door was still not closed, and sticky blood had poured into the crack of the door. The security system had been disconnected. Mingfei opened the automatic door, feeling that foreboding did not give him any foreknowledge of danger. The smell of blood was almost pungent, and the room behind that door was shrouded in scarlet tones, and sticky blood covered everything in the room. Shijinzi's face was pale and she stepped back several steps in succession. Even a talented ballet dancer could not maintain her balance in this bloody hell-like scene and fell to the ground. Although she had just cut off the yellow-haired man's 10 fingers, but cutting fingers is different from cutting the whole person. There is only about 5 liters of blood in an adult's body. No matter how serious the injury is, the amount of bleeding is limited. After death, the heart stops beating, and the blood can no longer be pumped out, and it will dry up in the blood vessels. What kind of cruel and ruthless precise killing knife skills must be used to make the human heart pump a large amount of blood before stopping beating? Xu Zhang's face was also extremely solemn. This was the bloodiest killing scene he had ever seen. It was as if someone was holding bucket after bucket of red paint and splashing everything inside. The corpse, which was a paint bucket, lay in a pool of slightly coagulated blood. Except for Finger, who did not directly witness it and was still saying in the headset, "Captain, how could you kick this chivalrous and tender thigh away with such a kick?" Mingfei was the only one who could maintain a calm expression in such a hellish nightmare. He squatted among the chivalrous and tender thighs on the ground and examined the wounds and blood of the corpses. Judging from their clothes, some of them were security guards of the Xingmu nightclub, some were armed guards with guns, and some were pharmaceutical workers wearing biochemical suits. Except for a small number of people who were cut in half, the wounds of others had one thing in common. No matter where the attack started, the shoulder, the ribs, or even the top of the head. The final destination of the attack was unified at the heart, and a horizontal cut cut the pulmonary artery and the aorta. All the arterial blood in the human body was output by them. So the heart pumped out almost all the blood in the last beat. It should be 6 minutes ago, when we just entered the nightclub. Fingal, can you see who did it here? Mingfei pressed the headset. No, there is no surveillance camera inside the pharmacy. The nearest one is just above your head when you just entered the door. I found the abnormality from the camera. Except for a group of security guards rushing in 7 minutes ago, no creatures have entered or left. It is still replaying, but the resolution of the surveillance camera here is a bit poor. It is not ruled out that the other party has the ability to hide or has left directly through other secret passages, Fingal paused. It is also possible that he is still in the pharmacy. There is no place to hide. Mingfei shook his head to deny. His sight has been searching around, and he has a premonition that foreboding has been activated. Even if the creature just has the desire to attack, the sidekick will give him feedback immediately. Mingfei continued to go deeper on the blood pool, and Xu Zhang and the school uniform girl with 2 swords, Shijinzi, also forced themselves to follow. The pharmacy is not too big, about 200 square meters. Large test tube containers, distillation tubes, purifiers and other chemical tools, as well as sharp gears for cutting bones, sharp knives, etc. occupy most of the area here. But what is even more shocking is the wall made of glass bricks at the end of the room. A tall bronze monster with arms open in the posture of the cross of Jesus crucifixion is sealed in ice. Shijinzi, who followed Xu Zhang in, covered her mouth in fear, fearing that her screams would wake up the sleeping monster. Deadpool, Xu Zhang's face was ugly, and he reached out to hold Mura's aim around his waist. Even though it was different from what he had seen before, he still recognized the identity of this ugly and ferocious creature. No, it can't be said to be ugly, it should be said to be beautiful. After walking in, I found that the dead pool frozen behind that glass brick wall was actually a female, or a woman. She has long black hair and a pale but beautiful face, but only on the face. She was deformed from the neck down, with bronze scales covering her body, and her lower body fused into a thick python-like tail. Her outstretched thick arms had knife-like bony fins, and huge, sharp, pale bony claws replaced her palms. She looked like a human-faced snake. In the midst of countries around the world, the image of a human-faced snake appears repeatedly, from the ancestors of mankind Fuxi and Niue, to Wemparataihao among the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, the way snake in purple clothes and a red crown seen by Duquan of Qin Shuangzi, and then the human-faced snake body and red, straight eyes and upright. When it closes its eyes, it is dark, and when it sees, it is bright and classic of mountains and sees the god of Thongshan, Zhuibin, who was called Naga in Sanskrit, the so-called Medusa in Greek mythology, and even the group of snakes whose names have been lost in the Mayan pantheon. They are between gods and demons, symbolizing temptation and ultimate mystery. But to Lu Mingfei, this is just an abominable alien. Even if she might have been a human being before she died. The alien is full of test tubes, connected to various instruments and containers in the pharmacy. It is obvious that the raw materials of the banned drugs come from it. And below the alien cross, a man in a suit was tied to a chair with blood all over his mouth and a dull look. According to the impression from the photo that Finkel had given earlier, the man in a suit was Kataru Kazogi, the first person Lu Mingfei and his team were looking for. The alien behind him was undoubtedly the best evidence that he had an intersection with Gloria. Lu Mingfei stretched out his hand and lifted up Kataru Kazoi's head. His eyes were cloudy and contracted, as if time had stopped at a moment of extreme fear. His 10 fingers were chopped off, his tongue was cut off, and he was already dying. That was a bit cruel. Lu Mingfei frowned slightly and gave up the idea of looking for information from Kotaro. His sight shifted back to the glass brick wall that sealed the alien. Below the tail of the alien, on each side hung a mask with white face and fangs like a demon. As if they had sensed Lu Mingfei's gaze, the 2 masks seemed to be alive, and 2 pieces of snow-white cardboard came out of their vermilion lips. Written in blood-red Chinese characters on them. Nice to see you. Stay tuned for good news. Almost at the same time, a short video flashed through Lu Mingfei's mind. Obvious cracks appeared on the glass brick wall, and slight explosions came from the inside of the ice that froze Deadpool with liquid nitrogen. One by one, the miniature bombs that had been preset earlier shattered the ice from the inside, and the alien revived. The bloodthirsty eyes locked onto him for the first time, so the premonition foreboding gave him advance feedback. Brother, prepare Jungyun. Lu Mingfei took a few steps back to create some distance. As for Nakazoi Kotaro, the heretic who'd cooperated with heretics to extract things from aliens to make illegal drugs, he had no intention of paying attention to him. Shuzaham immediately stepped forward. His black eyes were dyed with a layer of gold, as if a golden sea was flowing over. Bang 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 bang. As expected, dense and dull explosions sounded from the solid ice that sealed the alien behind that glass brick wall, and the flying ice chips could be clearly seen. The dead pool sealed in the ice seemed to come alive, with a pair of golden eyes lighting up, and a bloodthirsty and resentful gaze fixed on the 3 people present. Its body began to twist and swell, and the thin rubber hoses inserted all over its body, along with the needles, were forced out of the gaps in its scales, and its body seemed to be fully recovering. Shuzaham chanted the ancient language, obscure syllables floating, and the high-pitched voice sounded like the roar of an ancient bell. The temperature in the air began to become abnormally hot, and the word spirit Junyan was ready to release. The head of the human snake Deadpool had broken free from the ice, and it seemed to want to cheer and laugh. The cherry mouth on the beautiful female face split from both sides and extended to the ears, as if the entire skull was opened, and the sharp long teeth were as dense as thorns. But the howling sounded like a baby crying sadly. The next thing was the pair of bronze muscles and ferocious claws. The next second, it was like a beast out of a cage, and its entire body was completely free from the confinement of the ice. At this time, Shuzaham finished chanting the last syllable of Junyan. A dazzling sun rose from the 2nd underground floor, and then blasted towards the Deadpool who had just landed on the ground. Boom! The blazing flames engulfed Deadpool. The violent explosion caused by Junyan was like a gasoline bomb detonated here, and the ground shook for a moment. The guests of Xingmu nightclub felt the strongest shock. They mistakenly thought it was a sudden earthquake. The earthquake-resistance education they received since childhood made them, both men and women, evacuate to the open-air streets in an orderly manner. But the lights on Spire Street were still prosperous, young couples walked hand in hand, and everything was safe and sound. But the body of the snake-shaped Deadpool was much stronger than Shuzaham had imagined. Junyan was unable to kill the snake-shaped Deadpool directly, but only caused some damage to the other party. The charred flesh and shattered scales were recovering and growing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and its self-healing ability was amazing. Deadpool's golden eyes were filled with resentment and hatred. The next second, it twisted its tail like a flying king cobra, and its body quickly turned into an arrow shadow and pounced on Shuzahan. However, Mingfei's movements were faster than Deadpool. Deadpool's attack was ruthlessly interrupted, and when it stopped, a fiery red chainsaw sword had already roared and pierced its chest. Mingfei stood in front of Deadpool, holding his mutant neck tightly with one hand like a shackle, and the high-speed rotating chain blade in his hand bit its body frantically, causing black blood to splash everywhere. P.S. The sentence is about the nine-tailed fox, the underworld organization, and Tokyo being the largest city in Asia, are all from Jiangnan's original text, and are definitely not the author's personal stuff. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.